across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. There is one story in town this Friday evening, and that is that the appeal court has said that the Bell Hotel in Epping will remain open. Asylum seekers are there, and the judgment has been made that the human rights of the asylum seekers is more important than the rights of the people of Epping. What are your reactions to that? 0344 499 1000. You can let me know. I will get as many calls on the air as I possibly can between now and 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000. If you'd rather send me a voice note, you can use that number as well via WhatsApp. You can send me a message, a text message on WhatsApp on that number too. You can text me in the traditional way, 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Lots of ways of getting in touch. Get your point across, and let's get to the nub on the bottom of this issue. There's an awful lot to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. We'll talk about a few other minor stories. Kamala Harris, for example, the US Vice President previously under Biden, she has had her Secret Service removed by Donald Trump. We'll talk as well about the sport and what's coming up in the Sun tomorrow, but the main story today is that the Bell Hotel is going to stay open because an appeal has been won. One of the judges' names, quite literally Mr. Bean, which I think sums up everything to do with that case. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, I want to hear first from Councillor Ken Williamson. He's a member of Epping Forest District Council Cabinet, speaking outside the High Court after the ruling.
This is not the end of the matter. While the Court of Appeal has lifted the temporary injunction, the case for the final injunction is still to be heard. Our battle on behalf of our residents will continue. A few weeks from now, we will be back in court, where we trust the strength of our case will still prevail. Epping Forest has always given the Home Office much cause for reflection. We understand government faces a dilemma, but that should not be at the expense of local communities. Planning law may seem dull, it might seem boring, but it goes to the heart of the relationship between local communities and good government. It enshrines the rights of local people to have a say within their own communities, and it should not be set aside lightly. The government can still listen. It needs to understand and take responsibility for the events that have taken place in Epping over the past 6 weeks, for the trauma and disruption brought upon our community. The battle is not over, and we will continue the fight. It is nothing less than the people of Epping would expect and deserve.
So asylum seekers can stay in the Epping Hotel, the Bell Hotel, after the ruling. Quite simply, what the Bell is going on. How much do those judges earn? £241,796 a year. Do you think they live beside an asylum hotel? Do you think they have to put up with this? I don't think they do. What has happened purely and simply in this country is that the government, in legal argument, the Home Office argued this would not have happened without Yvette Cooper approving it. It would not have happened without Keir Starmer approving it. What Home Office lawyers have argued, really straightforwardly, is that the human rights of the asylum seekers are more important than people who live in Epping, and by extension, the people of the UK. That is the two-tier system that they are putting forward. They say on human rights grounds, purely and simply, the Bell Hotel needs to stay open, that these asylum seekers need to stay there. This has been backed up by 3 Court of Appeal judges, Lord Justice Bean, Lady Justice Davies and Lord Justice Cobb. They have said that this is correct, this is the correct decision, and the Bell Hotel should stay open. The government's policy is that by 2029 they want to close asylum hotels. Well, it is the 29th of August 2025, and the courts originally told, the High Court originally told the government to close 1 hotel. They say that can't be done. They say that will be a breach of the human rights of the asylum seekers. Do you honestly think this government is going to close 200 asylum hotels in the next 3.5 years? I'd be really, really surprised if they do it. But of course, smashing the gangs has worked. They've got 52 of them smashed. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to do. They're going to sort out migration. Well, they can't close one hotel, and your government, the government to which you pay taxes, the government to which at 4:07 you're maybe clocking off for the day, you're maybe heading home for the weekend, or in your car, or at home already, or you've worked hard all week, you've paid your taxes. What they're doing with those taxes is employing lawyers to say that people who have come to this country who have given absolutely nothing, nada, not a cent to this country, are more important than you. That is exactly what Home Office lawyers have argued in the Court of Appeal and won on this week. That's exactly what's happened. So what do you think? 0344 499 1000. Tony Smith is former head of the UK Border Force and joins me now. Tony, what's your reaction?
Well, I suspect it's the same as yours and many other people's, Peter, and that is disappointment, really. I think that the people of Epping were quite jubilant, weren't they, last week when they'd heard that they'd won in court. But as we know, the judicial system winds on, and eventually, in my experience, as you creep up the judicial system in this country, then human rights tend to take precedence. So I'm not at all surprised that the judges found in favour of the Home Office, and I wouldn't be at all surprised come October if they find in favour of the Home Office again, on the basis that irregular migrants arriving at our shores are entitled not to suffer inhuman and degrading treatment under Article 3 of the ECHR, and therefore we have an obligation to house them. And it's a bit of a jump to say we've got to put them in 4-star hotels from there, but that's the current policy, Peter, I'm afraid.
There has been widespread condemnation of this. It has also been welcomed by Lisa Foster. She is of Richard Buxton Solicitors, which represents Somani Hotels, which owns the Bell Hotel. We are pleased that the Court of Appeal has ruled that the injunction should not have been granted by the High Court. Our clients realise that they have been caught in the middle of a much wider debate on the treatment of asylum seekers, and respectfully ask that members of the public understand that the Bell Hotel has simply been providing a contracted service that the government requires. I really hope that if there are any protests tonight, they stay completely peaceful. If people lose their rag, if they break the law, well, that completely undermines their argument. But there is a lot of anger. I can see a nearly full switchboard here. I can see hundreds of messages coming in to this station this afternoon on this. There is real anger here, Tony. What does the government do next?
Well, I think they're in some difficulty here, Peter, because of their stance on the European Convention of Human Rights, and we've spoken about this before. I think we do need to do something about the ECHR. I can tell you, I was in the department 25 years ago when this all began, asylum support, and it was because we had vast numbers of people arriving in Dover. We didn't have enough detention accommodation. They didn't have any bail addresses. They were just being granted into the community. And again, we were challenged in law to say, well, you can't do that. You've got to provide accommodation. And that's when the asylum support system sprang up and the Home Office started to talk to local councils about where are we going to put people. That's just mushroomed over the last 20 years to this point where hotels, which were only ever meant to be a temporary measure, have now, captured the national interest to the point where people are saying, well, it's not on. But what they will continue to say, Peter, and they will continue to argue in court, is that they have an obligation under Article 3 of the ECHR to house asylum seekers. We need to challenge that and say, well, does it go that far? I mean, inhuman and degrading treatment. What about the asylum seekers in France who are camped out in the woods in Calais? What if you go to a number of European capitals where you will find asylum seekers not placed in hotels? In Germany, they built purpose-built prefabs to place asylum seekers. We are the only country I know of that goes so far as to say that in order to meet our obligations under the ECHR, we have to provide hotel accommodation in our communities. And I think that's a real problem for the government. And I'd really like to know, as you say, well, how are they going to decant them? And where are they going to decant them to, given that the Prime Minister seems to think there's vast amounts of accommodation.
Oh, there's no problem with social housing in this country, according to Keir Starmer. That's what he said. That's how in touch he is with this country, that he doesn't think there's a problem with social housing. I mean, it's completely crazy. Tony, thank you. That's Tony Smith there, former head of the UK Border Force. Margaret in Birmingham says, what a one-sided decision. He blames Epping Council, the previous judge who should complain to the powers that be. He blamed the protest. This judge today was not interested in this case. Cooper and Starmer should resign. They hate the British people. That is disgraceful, says Margaret in Birmingham. Emma says, afternoon, Peter. Well, after that ruling, we all know where we stand now and how the government thinks of this country and the people. It absolutely stinks, says Emma. I want to speak to human rights lawyer Mark Stevens now. Mark, is your argument, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is your argument simply that the government had no alternative here because of the European Convention on Human Rights?
No, I think as a lawyer or a judge, you have to strip away the hubris and the politics. And once you do that, this is a fairly straightforward case. And every thinking lawyer I know expected this outcome. There's a couple of factors that you have to take into account. This was a planning law case. It wasn't a human rights case. It touches on human rights, but it was actually a planning law case. And Epping Council have, for the past 3 years, allowed this hotel with planning permission to house asylum seekers in the hotel. They haven't taken any enforcement action, and so, you know, the hotel has undertaken a commercial contract. The hotel, of their own volition, got in touch with the council and said, do we need to sort of reclassify as a hostel, or are we okay as a hotel? The Epping Council ignored them for a year and then snapped this case on them. Now, the reality is that, you know, the bull question here is, what's the difference between a hotel and a hostel? You know, I accept that people may want people to go into hostels rather than hotels, but the fundamental difference that you have to consider as a lawyer and someone listening is, what is the difference between a hotel and a hostel? And the answer, as a matter of law, is that a hotel provides private rooms and services and prioritises some level of comfort and privacy, whereas a hostel is shared dormitory-style lodging in communal areas, affording...
So what's wrong with that, Mark? What's wrong with, with that
absolutely nothing. But you might think that the Bell Hotel, the clue is in the name, that it's a hotel, and therefore it's entitled to do what it's doing. And if you want to move them to hostels, that's absolutely fine. That won't infringe their human rights. But we don't appear to have the wherewithal to do that. But this narrow point that the judges considered today, is it a hotel or is it a hostel? And because any thinking person is going to say it's a hotel, it's got private rooms within it, and therefore it's within the planning law, it's a permitted activity. Epping Council permitted this activity at this location. They gave the permission. So trying to come along and say, now actually we need an injunction, was always doomed to failure. And I'll make a further prediction, because the point of law is so very narrow, they're going to lose in 7 weeks' time, and they'll be wasting public funds for the people of Epping.
So you actually think the council is wasting public funds by going a step further with this, because they're just not going to win?
They're just not going to win. This is a hopeless, hapless case. And, you know, if I were their lawyers, I'd be absolutely chuffed as ninepence to be getting 20 guineas an hour or whatever it is. But actually, it's a waste of local taxpayers' money. The question here is, can you comply with the human rights point is, can you comply with human rights by putting people into either purpose-built prefabs or into hostels? And the answer to that is, by and large, yes, you can do that. So you can lower the cost if you have the hostels. And there's no actual need to put them into a hotel, 4-star, 3-star, 1-star. Doesn't matter. But that isn't the narrative which is around this. So as a lawyer, I look at this very much on the facts of the case. I see Epping Council having done nothing for 3 years, for having actually not engaged in a consultation.
Okay.
And I look at the facts of it. Is it a hotel? Is it a hostel? Well, it's pretty obviously a hotel.
Mark, thank you for that. That's Mark Stevens, a human rights lawyer from Howard Kennedy. Let's speak to Dan in Liverpool. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Dan, first call of drive today. What do you think?
I'm absolutely fuming. I'm really sorry to say this, Peter. I'm really trying to calm myself down when I'm having to say this. I genuinely want people to be very civil. We don't want anyone rioting, because that doesn't help our cause one bit. But I genuinely want to know how far can they push it?
Yeah.
How high can you make a house of cards before eventually it topples over? I know you have Peter Cardwell on the show, and I am not advocating. I am repeating this. I am not advocating for anyone to do any vigilante just if you do, you're an idiot if you do that. But when is the breaking point?
Yeah, listen, Dan, I think that's a reasonable point. It is a reasonable point to ask. We've had Farage, for example, Nigel Farage, saying that he worries about public disorder. I worry about public disorder, and if there's anybody out there who's thinking of breaking the law this evening, don't do it. But people are really angry, Dan. I can hear the anger in your voice.
I'm mixed race. I've got my dad legally and his family legally have worked hard every single day. They live here. I work almost 60 hours a week, as hard as I can do in construction. I do not look like a full British person. At one point, someone is going to see me, maybe my sister, maybe my autistic brother, out in the street. We don't look fully English. And when someone gets so angry or they hear another child is being abused, when they see me, they might think, oh, there's one of them. When I've put into the system, I was born.
Well, Dan, as far as I'm concerned, you're absolutely fully English, and you're absolutely a patriot, and you're someone who cares about this country, and you're someone who wants it to be a better place. But how can it be a better place when you have Home Office lawyers in court arguing on human rights grounds that the human rights of the asylum seekers trump the people in Epping?
I know exactly how, and I've thought about this really clearly. People want to keep asking people on the left every time how much immigration is allowed. I genuinely think what we should do, we should have an open vote policy where at one time ever, your vote is linked to your national insurance number, and all the question is, are you for immigration? Yes or no? If you tick yes, you personally will be responsible for housing and looking after a migrant, and if they commit any crime, you will also be responsible for that person.
Well, Dan, it's an interesting idea. There's an awful lot of hypocrisy around this from so many people on the left who say, oh yes, I'm totally for immigration. Right, tell you what, asylum hotels opening in your street. How do you feel about that? Happy enough? Happy enough with that? Perhaps not. Lots more on this. We'll talk to someone on the scene in Epping as well. We'll get reaction from so many other people as well, including many of the callers who've given us a ring. You can use the break. You've heard the arguments, or some of them anyway. You can use the break to give us a ring. Jodie's on the phones today. Have a quick chat with her. We get you on as many people as possible, like Dan, between now and 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
just ask him to come and run us? We'd be like, you got Donald in America, right? You don't need to. Just have Donald. He's more than enough. Can we have JD, please?
Can we have JD? Because our second in charge, I mean, after what came out this morning about her evading the 40,000 quid on her own property for her stamp duty, I don't want our second. I cannot believe that we're existing in a parallel universe where Angela Rayner is our second in charge and they get JD Vance. It's completely unfair.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Simon's been in touch about this Court of Appeal judgment. What's the point of having a Home Office to protect the citizens of the UK, says Simon, and even abide by a public vote, brackets, Brexit, when they are going against everything the majority want? It's the Home Office that needs a clear out. Fuming Simon in Worcestershire here. I've got to be vague because these days I might have a knock at the door. Also, Elisa in Chelmsford says this judgment will increase Nigel Farage's lead in the polls. Labour is digging its own grave with every action they take. I just wish a general election would come by May next year so that we could start afresh with a government that chooses to serve the people and not act against us. Let's go to Epping. Andy Robinson is a reporter from The Sun. He's been at the Bell Hotel all day. Andy, what can you tell us?
Hi, Peter. Yeah, the feeling here is we've been speaking to locals throughout the day, obviously before the judgment and afterwards, and the general feeling is people are very concerned for the safety of their children, obviously on the back of that high-profile court case this week even. So that seems to be the general feeling, and I think the fact this judgment means there isn't that sort of end date of September 12th where the residents of the hotel will be moved out means they're now in limbo, sort of wondering what is going to happen. And people here have a lot of uncertainty about whether these migrants are going to be moved on or not. And I think it sort of sets it back to square one. They thought they had this final end date, and now they've been told this isn't the case.
Are there any demonstrations or anything planned tonight? Peaceful, we hope.
I mean, at the moment, there's not too many people down here. I believe there's a protest elsewhere, which I think a few people are going to go to. And I think the general idea with some of the demonstrators is they don't want to detract away from that one. But there's a few people here with St George's Cross flags, Union Jack flags, and the people here are furious, really, with the judgment and the fact the Home Office are now able to appeal that intervention. So it's just a case of we're going to see if there's any more people that turn up. I think sort of as people finish work and come home, that there might be more that turn up in droves, but I don't think there's this idea that there's going to be a huge demonstration tonight. There was a few people who arrived last night, sort of preempting that judgment, but yeah, we're expecting tonight might be a bit quieter.
Andy, thank you. We will look forward to reading your reporting in The Sun tomorrow and indeed online at thesun.co.uk. Thomas Godfrey is another reporter for The Sun. Thomas, what do you make of this judgment?
Good afternoon, Peter. Well, look, this is a striking judgment, and I think, as some of the opposition politicians have said this afternoon, it makes the position of the court clear that the rights under the ECHR of the migrants who are living in that hotel are more important than the concerns of the local residents and, of course, of Epping Council, which had brought this injunction to begin with. I mean, I was just stunned by the argument from the Home Office lawyers that allowing the temporary injunction to proceed, clearing out these residents from the hotel by the 12th of September, which was the date the injunction would take effect, the Court of Appeal found that would cause chaos in the asylum system.
Yeah, because there isn't chaos in the asylum system.
The asylum system
already
is already in chaos. It is You know, 200 hotels across the country at a cost of £5 million a day. The number of small boat migrants up 38% on last year. The asylum system is, if not in chaos, in collapse, to go even further. And yet we understand that Home Office officials, had they lost today's ruling, had already lined up an alternative hotel to take on the 138 asylum seekers housed in the Bell Hotel. Now, what we don't know yet is how much that's cost, how much that could have cost. All this is another cost line on top of a cost line on top of a cost line.
Yeah, I'm sensing a Thomas Godfrey FOI coming up in terms of how much that contingency costs. So the fact is they could have moved them if they wanted to, and the government saying that they want to actually close all of the 210 odd hotels, asylum hotels, by 2029. If they can't even close one in August 2025, what hope is there that the rest will be closed by the end of this Parliament?
No, absolutely. And they have made legal arguments now in court multiple times contrary to government policy. Home Office policy is to close every hotel by the next election. As you've just said, this one they could even get shut despite the local council wanting them to. But again, part of the reason they made the reasons they gave to the Court of Appeal was that this judgment, if it went against them, if they had to close the hotel, would incentivise other local councils to follow suit and do the same thing. And we know Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives this afternoon, has told those other councils, which include leadership by all parties, Lib Dem councils, Labour councils, Reform councils, Conservative councils, have all said they are assessing their options in relation to challenging the Home Office on this front. Kemi Badenoch has told them to keep going, to keep pushing through.
She has said local communities should not pay the price for Labour's total failure on illegal immigration. This ruling is a setback, Kemi Badenoch says, but it is not the end. I said a Conservative council seeking similar injunctions against asylum hotels keep going. Nigel Farage has said the government has used the ECHR against the people of Epping. Illegal migrants have more rights than the British people under Starmer. I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. Robert Jenrick as well, the Shadow Justice Secretary, said this is extremely disappointing. Yvette Cooper used taxpayer money, your money, to keep open a hotel housing illegal migrants. The government's lawyers argued accommodating illegal migrants was in the national interest. In court they said the right of illegal migrants to free hotels is more important than the rights of British people. Well, they are not.
Quite. And I mean, you just have to look at the atmosphere in Epping, and we've just heard from Andy there how although there doesn't seem to be a sort of mass demonstration tonight, last night was quite feisty. You can tell people are angry. He used the phrase back to square one. And for the people who, for the last month or so, have been gathering outside the Bell Hotel to try and force its closure, who thought they had secured a David versus Goliath victory against the government, who thought they had made their community, in their view, significantly safer by being able to have this hotel closed. Well, today, it simply is back to square one. And the question I've been sort of put to me from those people who were involved in those protests is all the talk about rights for illegal migrants. What about my rights? What about the rights of the people who live in Epping? What about the rights of women and children in there who, they say, don't feel safe walking around the vicinity of that hotel?
Let me ask you about how your reporting has changed what the government is doing. This exclusive story in the front of the Sun today by you, Thomas Godfrey, about thousands of pounds blown by the Home Office hiring staff to teach balloon craft and floristry to migrants facing the boot has been scrapped. Talk us through the last 24, 48 hours of your life.
Busy, I think, is the operative word. I mean, this is just staggering. It's again, another colossal waste of taxpayer money. Courses in things like floristry, balloon craft, these were all listed as necessary creative skills for someone.
Necessary
creative skills. These were relevant to the role of coming in and running courses, teaching migrants in immigration removal centres.
So they were going to leave.
The key word there being removal.
So if you're going to be sent back to Eritrea, the number one thing you need is how to model balloons.
And when you arrive back in Eritrea, suddenly you know how to do that. It may be a pointless skill. There's probably far better things they could have been teaching.
Whoever came up with this in Northern Irish parlance is a balloon, quite frankly.
Well, quite. And look, the Home Office today have directed all of those jobs to be scrapped. They have been removed from the website of Mighty, which was the government contractor responsible for listing them. Now, if you want to apply to teach balloon craft to migrants, you get a message that reads, this job application is closed. You know, we're very sorry. And I've been told that anyone who has applied so far their applications simply won't be considered. So I may have wrecked the dreams of some.
They'll have been let down to some extent.
Well, exactly, yeah. They've let the air out of their applications.
Excellent, excellent. Balloonacy, and the Balloonacy is now over a good victory. One victory, plenty more victories hopefully will occur, but one hasn't occurred today because the Court of Appeal has been in the government's corner. Thomas, thank you. That's Thomas Godfrey there, reporter at The Sun. Loads of people want to get in on this. If you want to get your voice on the air between now and 7 o'clock, there's one number you need, 0344 499 1000. We'll hear from you after the break. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for your company. There's one story in town today, and that is that the Court of Appeal is on the side of the government. They have said that the Bell Hotel in Epping will stay open. We're asking, what the bell? Rob says, I'm Epping angry. Cal says, do you really think Reform are going to get it at the next election? You're deluded. Rachel says, I'm not surprised with the verdict, but I'm disgusted. The government has made it formal. The rights of illegal immigrants trump people from this country, and they should never be allowed to set foot in the UK until we have the ability to deport. Well, we do have the ability to deport, we just don't often do it. One more before I go to calls. Lorraine says, I really object to Mark Stevens, the human rights lawyer, blaming Epping Council and stating they are wasting taxpayers' money. They have no choice. Their constituents are no longer safe. Labour and Starmer cause this. They waste the taxpayers' money every single time they allow an illegal migrant to enter our country. I am so disgusted. Labour is a treacherous cabal, and it has no intention to support the British people. The rights of illegal migrants trump the rights of young British girls and women's safety. Labour are duplicitous traitors, says Lorraine. Let's go to Mike in Warwickshire. Mike, you're very welcome to the programme. 0344 499 1000, the number you have called. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm just very surprised because the ECHR, other countries in Europe take no notice of it, and they just do what they like.
We've ignored it before as well, Mike. We've ignored the European courts. We've done it.
It's advisory,
yeah.
Right? Now, the other thing, and that's why the human rights lawyer annoys me, because he makes out as though, oh, it's this, it's that, it's the other. The fact of it is that this government has misled the British people. It doesn't like the British people and anything that we stand for as people, and they are deliberately going out of their way to push forward their narrative, which is damaging this country to the point of which it may end up at no return.
You think things are that bad?
Right.
You think things are that bad?
Yeah, absolutely. How can How can somebody come here illegally? So they've already broken a law. How can somebody come to this country illegally and have more rights than me? I was born here. I can trace my lineage back here for hundreds of years.
But the point is, the government has argued, and Home Office lawyers have argued in court today, that doesn't matter, Mike. Your rights don't matter. What matter are the rights of asylum seekers. That is the legal argument that has been put forward by Home Office lawyers. That will have been signed off by Yvette Cooper. That will have been signed off by Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, the most dangerous man in government, in my opinion. That will have been signed off by Keir Starmer. That's the legal argument. That's what the government thinks of us.
How can they then turn around and say they have the interests of the British people at heart? They just can't.
Mike, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate that. That's Mike in Warwickshire there. Amy on Twitter says, I'm not surprised, to be honest, especially as lawyers for the Home Office said that the rights of asylum seekers trump those of people in Epping and their concerns. Steve in Milton Keynes, this judgment throws fuel on the fire of public concern and disquiet. It lends weight to the belief, rightly or wrongly, that this government will fight for asylum seekers over the rights and concerns of the British people. If the government had any sense, they'd shut the hotel and move the occupants to head off the October case and public disorder. The whole thing is a bad look for the government. They could do without. This, as another person simply says, the word disgraceful. David says, shattering news for Epping residents. Their own government thinks the welfare of illegal invaders is more important than the safety of their women and children. An obscene upending of the contract between the government and the people it deigns to rule. Let's speak to Robert in Nottingham. Robert, what are your thoughts on the matter? You're very welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon, Peter.
Hi there.
I think the interesting thing is going to be the continuing political fallout from this judgment. I'm not surprised. I'm very disappointed with the way it's gone. But I think, reasonable members of the public, they're not looking at this thinking, is it within the law or any laws? They're saying, is it reasonable?
Is it fair? The fairness aspect.
Yeah. And it reminds me of the MP's expenses scandal where MPs were saying it's within the rules.
Within the rules, yeah. Well, let me just read to you. Let me just read to you what the Immigration Minister, Dame Angela Eagle, has said today. This is her view. It's a little bit long, but I'm just going to read it. Yeah. This government will close all hotels by the end of this Parliament, and we appeal this judgment so hotels like the Bell can be exited in a controlled and orderly way that avoids the chaos of recent years that saw 400 hotels open at a cost of £9 million a day. The number of hotels has almost halved since its peak in 2023, and we have brought down costs by 15%, saving £700 million and putting us on track to save £1 billion a year by 28-29. We're also working hard to relieve pressures on the system and striking back at criminal people smuggling gangs at every stage, including returning more than 35,000 people who have no right to be here, equipping law enforcement with counter-terrorist style powers, and starting to detain small boat arrivals under our groundbreaking deal with France. It will take some time to fix the broken system we inherited, but the British public deserve nothing less, and we will not stop until the job is done. What do you make of what Dame Angela Eagle, the Immigration Minister, has said?
Well, I'm willing to bet all the hotels won't be closed by the end of this Parliament. That's the first point.
Yeah, well, they can't even close one of them. They're told by a court to close one of them, and they won't do it.
Yeah, this is a typical promise made by all politicians on this subject. I think, who knows, but I just don't think it's going to happen. And I think that this is a Pyrrhic victory for the government. They've won this particular battle, but they haven't won the war by a long way. It's the way reasonable people are feeling. If you're a parent in Epping and with a young daughter and you're worried about them sort of walking to school, that sort of thing, this is what matters to real people.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Robert. Listen, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate it. Thanks to Gary in Swindon, who says, can we have a vote of no confidence in this government? I'm worried we're going to have riots like the poll tax riots. The Labour government will never win another election. Well, Gary, let's hope there aren't riots. Ellie in Westminster says, I believe the people in all the communities with migrant hotels will need to put a ring of steel around those hotels to keep those immigrants inside. There's going to be a nasty accident if not, and I'm concerned about women and children. Well, Ellie, we know there are allegations, there are court cases that are active already against asylum seekers in those hotels who have allegedly committed crimes against women and girls. That has happened. John in Newport says, good evening, Peter. This appeal court ruling is a massive own goal for the government. As for the judge that made this ruling, he looked like two cooked dinners away from the grave. People this far out of touch should not be judges, says John. Well, listen, I'm sure Mr. Justice Bean Lord Justice Bean, Mr. Bean himself, has a great knowledge of the law. The problem is that he's using the law and he's judging the law against what I would argue are the interests of the people of this country, including in Epping. Paul in Luton says, loving your controlled anger and straightforward explanation of the two-tier system we are now dealing with, says Paul. Thank you, Paul. The point is that we should be angry, but we need to control our anger, we need to focus it, we need to be peaceful, and we need to make our points really clearly, because the government and the judiciary actually needs to listen to us in terms of this, because it may be fair, it may be legal under human rights law, it may be the European Convention on Human Rights. Do we now need to withdraw from that? If we had withdrawn from that, would things now be different? Well, those questions will go on. Let's speak to Ian in London, who's given me a ring as well. You can too. 0344 499 1000. Ian, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
I told you I'd get on.
You did. You messaged me earlier on Twitter and said, I'm going to ring in, I hope I get on. And now you have. Go ahead.
I have. Right. There's two things to all of this. One is it's very funny how I think part of the judgment was that any of the protesters outside the hotel could be done. It's not right. They're not allowed to protest outside.
Well, there are legal protests and they're perfect. They're fine. They're able to do so.
Yeah, because it seems strange. They can stop one lot of protesters doing that, and yet they can't do the pro-Pally ones in Southend, but that's a different story. Right, but the other thing comes about this. Can you imagine all the gangs that they want to smash? They're going, most probably, to all their clients, don't worry, they've now stopped it. You can have the hotel.
Yeah.
You can get in now because they're not going to throw you out because they're now backing you to come in. So there's going to be even more.
Yeah, don't listen to that stuff the government's saying about closing the hotels, because they've been told by the courts to close one hotel. They've fought tooth and nail to make sure that doesn't happen. So if you're a gang master saying, right, give me 3,000-4,000 euro to get across the UK, you're rubbing your hands with glee today, aren't you, Ian?
Absolutely, because they're going to say, look, the people don't want you, but don't worry, Starmer and Rayner and Rachel Reeves, they're getting more money for you. They're making it easier for you. And like whether they put you in luxury hotels or they're going to build nice homes for you to go all over the country, it's an open season.
But the good news is that there's no problem with social housing in this country. There's loads of it. So they can all go into social housing, because Keir Starmer is so in touch with the people of this country that he has told Parliament that there's loads of social housing and there's no issue.
And if he's not got it, Gary Lineker's got it for them, because I'm sure he'll sort of put them up as well.
If Gary Lineker wants to take some asylum seekers to live in his house, I'll drive them there myself. Ian, thank you for your thoughts. That's Ian in London there. James says we need to see the homeless people of this country take the government to court over their human rights. Sam says, if France is part of the ECHR, why are these migrants living in shacks and not housed? Stephen Wales says, Zia Youssef said not one judge will stop any plane from departing. Regarding the court decision, Jesus wept, says Steve. Jeremy says, I keep hearing the expression asylum seekers and our legal duty to house them. They're not asylum seekers, they're illegal immigrants. They've entered this country illegally. We have no obligation whatsoever to house foreign criminals. We have an obligation to protect our own people from these criminals. Let's hear a few voice notes. Lucy's been in touch with a voice note.
I've been driving home and heard about the injunction and all of that, and I just had to pull over and tell you how disgusted I am. It is clear to me now that this government has no care for us normal Brits and even the immigrants that have come here legally. So they've got no hope now, and I think this is the final nail in the coffin, if it wasn't already.
Lucy, thanks for that. Let's hear from Gaz.
I'm close to tears, to be fair, mate. I'm a UK citizen. We have been absolutely sold down the river, I just can't get my head around it.
Gaz, thanks for that. Just a reminder, not that I would ever want you to turn off your radio or TV when I'm on it, but just turn it down if you are recording a voice note. Becky has been in touch with her voice note. Let's hear that.
As I heard the result from the court, a thought struck me. If, as this government keeps telling us, we need to prepare for war, then which of these two groups will they be asking, or demanding, or conscripting to go and fight for this country? Will it be the Epping residents or the migrants? I think we know the answer, don't we?
Becky, thanks for that. Donna in Birmingham says, hi Peter, Mr Bean, the judge said that all the protesting in the world will not change the ruling of the court. I'm sad to say, Peter, but there will be carnage on our streets because of that stupid judge's comments. It's almost like he's goading the protesters to take that very step. We live in very scary times, says Donna in Birmingham. I'm sure there's no suggestion that the judge is goading those people, but let's hope if there are protests, they stay peaceful. And the point is that if they stay peaceful, you make your point. You break the law, you lose the argument. Chris says, Mark Stevens says, we want them to move to hostels. No, we don't. We want them to be in a field surrounding with a fence and barbed wire, no phones, and kept until we can get rid of them. And finally, before the break, Peter in Norwich says, I think the ruling this afternoon is good in one way only, that it is will open the electorate's eyes to the fact that the judiciary is no longer independent. It is merely another arm of the Labour government. This case was always going to be appealed up through the courts until it was placed in front of a leftist set of judges, says Peter in Norwich. Well, I've no idea what the personal politics of those judges are. What I do know is that they earn £241,796 a year, which is a heck of a lot more than the £36,500, which is the average salary that most people earn in this country. It's, 7 or 8 times that, maybe more. I'll do the calculation in the break, but the fact is that those judges do not live near an asylum hotel. I can guarantee it. I can guarantee they don't know anybody who has protested on this protest. They don't know anybody who has dealt with what the people of Epping and many people right across the UK are dealing with. If you want to get your voice on the air, if you want to be heard today, if you have things to say about this, let me know. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
just ask him to come and run us. We're like, you got Donald in America, right? You don't need to.
They tried to adjust the personal independence payment and their Labour MPs wouldn't vote for any spending cuts, which didn't surprise me at all. That's partly why we're headed for crisis, because if Labour MPs won't vote to control spending, quite the reverse, they'll rebel in large numbers, then even if Rachel Reeves wanted to do the right thing, she wouldn't be able to. So it's a very serious situation, I'm afraid, and thank goodness for your listeners, because until the public are demanding lower taxes, we're really, and that means lower spending, of course, we're really headed towards disaster.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch. I've just been looking through Twitter there, loads of people getting in touch there. Angela says, I am very unhappy about this decision. It's as if people affected don't matter. I also can't understand how councils do not have any powers in this situation. The human rights lawyers and some judges are now enemies of the people. Another person says, it's time to choose Great Britain versus Third World Britain. It's very clear the government is not on our side. And another person says, why must the UK put them in hotels while the rest of Europe don't? It's almost as if the European Convention on Human Rights makes special rules for the UK. Well, the fact is we do more than we need to on all of this. We apply that and follow it to the letter. On my face today, someone says, that's an angry face. Good, it's the face of the country. Leah says, as a fellow Ulsterman born and bred, Peter, you will know that the Epping appeal was always going to go the establishment way as opposed to the people's way. Given the way Boris, the establishment, the EU and lately Labour have treated Northern Ireland as a political football during Brexit, now the rest of the UK know how it feels to be second-class citizens just like us, says Les. Let's speak to Andy Preston. He's a political commentator and the former independent Mayor of Middlesbrough. Andy, your reaction to this decision today, please.
Predictable. It was entirely predictable, Peter. And I don't mean the judiciary's judgment. I think they are completely independent. But what is predictable is the response of the general public, the response of Nigel Farage. Reform are going to soar. Labour are going to plummet to new lows. And the public are getting angrier. So we should expect to see more protests, more tension, potentially more violence. So this is a really, really bad result. And the alarming thing, Peter, and for all of your watchers and listeners, is that it doesn't have to be this way. I've costed this, I've spent work and time on it. For about £20 a night, instead of 120 or 160 pounds a night, we can have decent quality, safe, modular accommodation on government land, military bases and other places, and deal with this in a much easier way that doesn't raise tensions and saves hundreds of millions. So why Starmer isn't doing it, goodness knows. This is definitely the beginning of his undoing.
It's interesting that the judges certainly were not too happy with some of the arguments even made by the council, also some of the lawyers as well. And the Home Office lawyers argued in court, in the Court of Appeal, that the rights of the migrants, the rights of the asylum seekers, were higher and should be given greater consideration than those of the people of Epping. They also said and argued that there could be chaos in the asylum system if this went through. The point is that Labour have said that by 2029 they're going to close all the asylum hotels. If they can't close one of them, one of the 200, less than 1% of those hotels, if they can't do one of them because a court tells them to do so, what hope is there that the other 200 will be closed by the end of this Parliament, do you think, Andy?
I think there's almost no hope, Peter. You know, we all remember the Nightingale hospitals and how remarkably quickly those buildings were put up in literally something like 14, 20 days in one case. We can genuinely do this and move people out of hotels within 2 to 3 weeks. And why the government isn't doing it, well, God only knows, but one has to suspect that they perhaps at some level don't want to. They would rather spend the money, they would rather presumably reassure a certain element of their voters. I really don't know. But this is politically really dumb, it's financially dumb, and it's going to lead to more trouble, more strife and heightened tensions.
What happens now, do you think?
I suspect more protests. I suspect heightened tensions. I fear that overspills into violence. And I think that we will ultimately see a government climb down and a move towards what they could have done literally 9 months ago, which is create modular housing, saving hundreds of millions, put these people in safe, contained spaces for their own safety, for the safety of the public, to reassure the public, and everybody would like that. And I think that's what will... Starmer will climb down on this. He's going to have to. His backbenchers will be getting onto him, because this is just going to grow, Peter. It's not going away.
You said though, Andy, first of all, obviously, I'm sure both of us would be absolutely happy to clarify that under no circumstances will we condone any violence whatsoever, and nobody should do anything violent. Andy's, of course, nodding his head there, and thank you for that. I mean, you say the judiciary is independent, and we need the independence of the judiciary is an incredibly important cornerstone of our society. 3 judges ruled in favour of the Home Office, overturning the temporary judgment. But Mr. Justice, or Lord Justice Bean, David Bean, is a former treasurer of the Society of Labour Lawyers. The group openly calls itself an affiliated socialist society, providing legal and policy advice to the Labour Party and to Labour MPs. He was also a founding member of the left-leaning law firm Matrix Chambers, whose members have included the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, and Mauritius's chief legal advisor in the Chagos surrender deal, Philippe Sands, KC. Now, those 2 things may be totally coincidental, but a number of people are going to say, hold on a second, Lord Justice Bean, how independent are you actually when it comes to a highly political case? The question is reasonable to be asked, is it not, Andy?
It is totally reasonable, and that's the issue that Starmer and Labour have now. It doesn't matter how independent the judiciary will be. This is about how this looks, and this is about how people will feel. And many people now will see this as a stitch-up. They'll see it as part of a bigger conspiracy. And that's why I'm certain this is now another notch down the road to Keir Starmer's undoing, the political deafness of him and his advisors, and it's gathering pace. And the sad thing is, this doesn't need to happen. As I keep saying it because it's important. For the safety of the public, for the safety of the asylum seekers, to save lots of money and to reduce tension, these people could be housed on government land, saving hundreds of millions of pounds. But there's something stopping Keir Starmer doing that.
Andy, thank you. Andy Preston there, political commentator, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. I appreciate you joining us today. Let's hear a voice note now from Alex, please.
Just had the human rights lawyer on, saying that this was an easy case because it was a planning law case and it was dead straightforward. Is it a hostel or is it a hotel? Well, why are the government's lawyers or barristers bringing into the fact that there's a human rights issue? Surely if it's a planning issue, you talk about the law being, or the law around planning, not human rights. Absolutely disgusted with the way this government's going, absolutely disgusted with the way the country's going. Something's going to happen soon, and we're the ones that get blamed for it all.
Yeah, and it's really interesting with the human rights argument. It was part of the written argument that the Home Office made, and the judge has actually said in their judgment the written arguments on behalf of the Home Secretary in this appeal, including the contention that the relevant public interests in play are not equal. And the one aspect of this is that the Home Secretary's statutory duty is a manifestation of the UK's obligations under Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights. This point was not pursued in oral argument. Any argument in this particular context about a hierarchy of rights is, in our view, unattractive. So even the judges said that that wasn't something that they thought. No doubt these issues and many more will be brought up on Mike Graham and Jeremy Kyle's World of Common Sense. I'm sure you know that tickets for Mike Graham and Jeremy Kyle's live show, World of Common Sense, are now on sale. This exciting event is going to take place on Saturday, the 15th of November at Shepherd's Bush Empire in London. You can secure your tickets today. You can go to Ticketmaster or go to Mike Graham's Twitter account at IROMG, obviously Independent Republic of Mike Graham, or Jeremy Kyle's Instagram, where the link is pinned at the top. That's World of Common Sense, Saturday the 15th of November 2025. Not long to go now until Jeremy and Mike's World of Common Sense. Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including this person who says, as a son of a West Indian father who left his country to fight for Britain in the Second World War, I'm absolutely livid with this Labour government. At 76, I'm too old to be much use to fight, but I mean, I want to fight for this country. I want it back. Obviously fighting not in the literal sense, but we can fight with using words on this station. And if you want to get your point across between now and 7 o'clock, give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. Plenty more to come.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Friday evening. There's one story in town, and that is the Court of Appeal ruling in the government's favour on the Bell Hotel. The Bell Hotel in Epping is going to stay open. That is the ruling of the court. There's further legal action on this. It's unlikely to succeed. We'll talk about this for the majority of the programme between now and 7 o'clock. I want to make sure that you get your voice on the air. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk as well about Kamala Harris losing her Secret Service protection. Is that a routine thing or vindictiveness by Donald Trump? We'll get the latest on that. We'll also talk about the sport and take a peek in what's inside the Sun tomorrow as well. Lots to discuss. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Get your voice on the air. You can send me a voice note on that number as well. We've had plenty of those today. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on that number too. You can also text me in the traditional way on 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV and follow me at Peter Cardwell. Lots to discuss between now and 7. Let's hear from you. Let's hear from our guests too. Here on Talk. Stay with us. Well, it was Epping Council that were involved in this legal action, and Councillor Ken Williamson is a member of Epping Forest District Council. As Cabinet, he spoke outside court after this ruling today.
This is not the end of the matter. While the Court of Appeal has lifted the temporary injunction, the case for the final injunction is still to be heard. Our battle on behalf of our residents will continue. A few weeks from now, we will be back in court, where we trust the strength of our case will still prevail. Epping Forest has always given the Home Office much cause for reflection. We understand government faces a dilemma, but that should not be at the expense of local communities. Planning law may seem dull, it might seem boring, but it goes to the heart of the relationship between local communities and good government. It enshrines the rights of local people to have a say within their own communities, and it should not be set aside lightly. The government can still listen. It needs to understand and take responsibility for the events that have taken place in Epping over the past 6 weeks, for the trauma and disruption brought upon our community. The battle is not over, and we will continue the fight. It is nothing less than the people of Epping would expect and deserve.
Well, a huge amount of reaction coming into this building. Add your voice to it, 0344 499 1000. Terry in Slough has sent me a text on 87222 with the word talk in his text, saying, "Hi Peter, so it's official that this Labour government have put the welfare of asylum seekers and illegal immigrants before the safety of British people. I've got nothing but utter contempt for the lot of them. In my opinion, they're absolutely disgraceful," says Terry. Michael says, "Good afternoon. Yvette Cooper is true to form here. Her reaction to the 2016 Democratic vote says everything you need to know about her. She did everything in her power to block and reverse the referendum, despite claiming she would honour the result. There is not an honourable bone in her body, in Michael's opinion." Gary has been in touch as well. I've read out his message. Tim in Brighton says, "Words fail me. How much more can we take? I work hard for my family, not for illegal migrants to have an easy life. Angry ain't the word. Cheers, great show." And Imogen in London says, "Good afternoon, Peter. I feel sick at this dire result. The will of the people has been overruled. The immigrants are gloating, no doubt. This wretched government doesn't care less about the population of this country." Let's go to Epping now. Karen McIver is branch secretary at Epping Forests Reform UK. Karen, are you angry, resigned? Did you think this was predictable? What are your thoughts today?
Good evening. Thank you very much, Peter, for having me on.
Good evening.
Extremely let down. I feel let down every angle we turn. You know, obviously let down by the government. They're not listening to the British people. We feel very much second-class citizens in our own country. Let down locally by the Conservative-led Epping Forest District Council. You know, actually, it's their inaction and their many errors that has allowed this not to happen. Why? I said before on one of your shows, why has it taken them till August to put the, you know, why didn't they do this in April when the hotels reopened? Why
So you think at least some of the blame goes to the council?
I just think it's a whole mess. The whole thing is a mess. And let's not forget, the alleged incidents that have taken place and those poor families, that are at the heart of all of this as regards the hotel in Epping. Let's not forget that. I just feel that we have been let down locally. The Conservative. I mean, it's just interesting listening to your preview there with Chris, the leader there, the deputy leader, or whoever's representing the council.
Ken Williamson.
Yeah,
we heard from Ken Williamson.
They've not stood with us. We are their people. They've not stood with us. I've been at every single protest. The councillor for Epping, the leader of Epping Forest District Council, they've not stood with us, and yet they're talking like they're our heroes. They're not. Last week they were doing some sort of, victory parade, like they were superheroes. They've not stood with us once, and it's very, very frustrating. And they need to question their roles at the moment. I believe, it's their inaction that has made this. Things wouldn't have happened if they'd acted sooner. Number one. Number two is that the government are not listening to the people. I mean, listening to all your calls there, and I've been listening to it all afternoon. It's so sad to hear the British people feeling so let down. The country is in such a mess. Now, let me tell you, our elections locally were cancelled on the 1st of May by the Conservatives.
Well, postponed.
Postponed, yes, sorry, postponed, but we weren't able to vote. As a normal resident, I wasn't allowed to vote for who I want to represent me. And I question if reform were in on the 1st of May, this may be a different story. But I urge everybody that, we will continue to fight.
Do you think are there further protests planned tonight in Epping, Karen? What's happening?
I'm not aware of any tonight. I'm not an organiser, but let me tell you, the people will continue to protest, and we will continue to protest peacefully. The hotel is inappropriate. It's in the wrong place. It's next to a secondary school. Those poor families, their children are going to school next week. They're going to school. The nights are starting to get darker. It's just so wrong on every level. I feel that the government have let us down so badly. And when you saw it come out this afternoon, and they're just so. I've never seen so much out of touchness. They're not in touch with their people. And as you've been reporting, it's as though the illegal immigrants have more power in our country than us hard-working British people.
Well, that's exactly what the Home Office lawyers argued. They argued their rights trump yours. The rights of those people in that hotel. The Home Office argued in court in their written submission that your rights are less important than the asylum seekers' rights. That is what lawyers paid for by you, paid for by taxpayers, put forward in court.
And that sums it up completely. Out of touch. I would love there to be a general election tomorrow, because I think it would be a very, very different outcome. I think people there's a lot of people regretting voting for Labour, and they're not sticking up for British people. And Epping is a very sad situation. There's no winners here. When we think about the reason why we're protesting in the first place, there is no winners here. But the hotel, there's no point saying the government saying they've won. There's no winners here. Let's think of the poor families. Do you think people want to protest twice a week? People have got a busy life. They haven't got time to do this, but we all do it because we know it's the right thing to do, and we feel very strongly that this hotel is so inappropriate, and that is the point here. And that hasn't been heard. We're talking about planning and different things. The hotel is inappropriate. It's next to a secondary school. Who's going to answer those questions? Because I don't see anybody. We have weak leadership all around us. At Epping, we have weak leadership. In the government, we have weak leadership.
Okay, Karen, thank you. That's Karen McIver there, Branch Secretary at Epping Forest Reform UK. Thanks to Mick, who says this is what happens when you have a weak, incompetent government. Activists, lawyers and judges have a field day, and the public are treated with contempt. Marcus in Exeter says, I'm disgusted, deflated, angry, let down again, and feeling really anti-establishment. And at the age of 54, I cannot believe how low this government are prepared to go. Let's speak to our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel, good evening to you. What do you make of this?
I think it's so important on so many levels, and whilst it may sound like a victory in quotes for this government, I actually think it's a political disaster for them. They have pitted themselves against the people, and they have, at least in the short term, won. But in a democracy, if a government or a political party pits themselves against the people, there's only ever one winner, and it may take time, but my God, there's going to be hell to pay for this outcome. I listened to the full judgment, or at least not the written judgment, but as it was articulated by one of the three judges. And it's absolutely true, as Karen said just a minute ago. that Epping Council made a number of quite serious mistakes, and that was the basis on which, or one of the bases on which the judges came to the conclusion that they did today. It was actually quite interesting listening to the background to this, and the truth is that particular hotel has been used as an asylum seeker hotel for a considerable amount of time, and Epping Council didn't take opportunities way back in 2023 to challenge it. And indeed, when the owners of the hotel, the operators, applied for a consent for change of use, the council just sat on that application for over a year. They didn't do anything with it. Basically, I guess they sort of wanted it all to go away. And that very much played against them in the ruling today. The other thing that's important to point out, and I don't think I had fully appreciated, and a lot of our listeners and viewers may not have, is that this is just a temporary skirmish, if you like, ahead of the main trial on this matter, which is in mid-October. So there's a lot more of this to come. Nonetheless, I do feel pretty pessimistic that when it comes to the main case, I don't think it doesn't feel to me likely that Epping Council are now going to win. Why not? Well, because basically, as the judge that was reading out the decision today said, essentially, if the judiciary finds in favour of Epping Council on this matter generally, it will cause chaos. I mean, he didn't use the word chaos, but he said that the previous judge had failed to take into account the enormous repercussions if Epping Council's
and disorder. They talked about potential disorder.
He did. So he essentially said, look, I'm paraphrasing here, but the judge said today that if he were to uphold the injunction, which meant that all these, the occupants of the hotel would have to be kicked out, essentially. He said, my goodness, you know, I'm paraphrasing here, this will lead to chaos because a bunch of other councils will bring the same sort of legal bids, and before we know it, the government is going to find that all the migrant hotels have to close. Yay, said most of the population, but oh my God, said the Home Office. And he did also say that if he upheld the previous judge's ruling, that might encourage more protests. Well, yes, you know, we actually...
And the vast majority of those protests have been completely...
The
vast majority of those protests have been completely legal and completely safe and completely within the law. There have been a few arrests. There were about 15 arrests last weekend across about 30 protests. So actually the vast majority of people obeying the law, protesting peacefully and simply saying, well, this might lead to more protests. So what? That's a right that people have within a democracy, or perhaps they've forgotten that.
Well, absolutely. But again, having listened to the full judgment, he didn't rely on the risk of protest or the risk of chaos trying to find other homes for asylum seekers. He did have some quite good grounds to draw on, which was the fact that Epping Council had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to challenge this in the past, and they didn't do so. Now, Epping Council might well and reasonably argue, well, previously, you know, those were different times. There wasn't such a head of steam about this in terms of the public mood. You know, the sheer numbers were different. You know, each and every week we see more added to the list of people needing this accommodation. And Epping Council brought this action because people are beginning to protest about it. So, you know, this is an unholy mess, but it doesn't end well for the government. So to all our listeners and viewers tonight, feeling utterly despondent and exasperated, just hold your nerve, guys. Ultimately, governments that go against the will of the people are governments that fall.
Very good point, Isabel. Thank you, Isabel Oakeshott there, Talk's international editor. Thank you to her for her thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the way you can get yours on the air. Let's speak to Marcus in Bedford, who's given me a shout. Marcus, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
How you doing, Peter? I hope
Hi.
you're well. A big shout out to Isabella. She just pulled up a massive good point there. Let's use the word democracy. Obviously, that's not being used at the moment. We're not just talking about what's going on in the Bell. We're talking about what's going to the implications which are going to happen over the UK. We've all had enough, and democracy and peaceful protest, and the Labour government are just smearing it as far right, and it's an absolute disgrace, to be quite honest.
I totally agree with you, and I think that so many people will feel betrayed by this judgment on the fact that this is happening, and possibly even betrayed by Epping Council, who, as both Karen McIver and indeed Isabel Oakeshott pointed out there, they screwed up too.
Well, yeah, of course, because they're playing chase up. I mean, but the thing is this has been bubbling. I mean, Peter, how long has this been going on? I mean, we're talking about 4 or 5 years, and we've all noticed, you know, you go into the town centre, you see people shoplifting, selling cheap fags, pushing drugs on the streets and stuff like that, going back, doing the Deliveroo's. It's in plain sight. Everyone can see it, and the British public have just had enough and said, look, come on, pack it in.
Marcus, thanks for your thoughts. That's Marcus in Bedford there. Mary in Hemel Hempstead has some views on this too. You're very welcome to the programme, Mary. What would you like to say?
Well, the problem is that these people aren't contained. What we're objecting to is them wandering the streets all hours. Surely they can be put into military camps where there is high fencing and they are contained, all of them. And then retired teachers could be called to go in to teach them what our culture is, how our language is spoken, what our laws are, how we treat women, the whole thing, even the history of our country. But the way it is at the moment, they're just roaming free. And I can see this actually breaking out into outright riots like they had in the poll town.
Well, let's hope it doesn't, Mary, but certainly there is a lot of anger out there. I can hear yours, certainly. Mary, thank you for that. Thanks, Andy and Thatcham, who says, I've just paid the membership to join Reform UK. I'm so angry. I just hope Reform UK doesn't go soft and I can get this country back on track. People have to understand Reform UK is not an overnight fix and will have to be given time to fix the major issues the last government and this one has created. I will be door knocking when the time comes to help our local candidate. Great shows from All It Talk, says Andy and Thatcham. Thank you for that. Nick says, how long before every migrant is given a new Bentley, diamond encrusted watches and yachts? It's only a matter of time, says Nick, I think perhaps with his tongue in his cheek. Richard in Gloucester says, they are not asylum seekers, they are legal immigrants and should be in a detention camp, not a hotel. Becky in Bolton, another betrayal of the people of our green and pleasant land. Martin in Gillingham, good afternoon, Peter. The three stooges that signed this off are in the government's pocket. Rename the Home Office the Migrant Office. When will they realise that they're sitting over a pressure cooker? One day soon the safety valve will blow. Two things with that, Martin. Let's hope the safety valve doesn't blow. Let's hope people allow their opinions to be ventilated at the home of free speech here on Talk, rather than taking any violent action whatsoever, which we completely condemn and cannot happen. Also, very, very interesting one as well in regard to the point about the judges. Now, there's no suggestion that the judges are anything but independent. However, I think it is worth noting the facts in regard to these judges. The facts are there. Lord Justice Bean, for example, who was giving the judgment today, well, he is factually a former treasurer of the Society of Labour Lawyers. The group openly calls itself an affiliated socialist society, providing legal and policy advice to the Labour Party and to Labour MPs. Lord Justice Bean was also a founding member of the left-leaning firm Matrix Chambers. Former members included the Attorney General Lord Hermer and Mauritius's chief legal advisor on the Chagos surrender deal, Philippe Sands KC. Another person who was part of Matrix Chambers, Cherie Blair. Now, Lord Justice Bean may well be totally independent. I'm not suggesting he isn't. I'm not suggesting that his judgment was not based on the law. But the perception of an independent judiciary that may not be independent in the views of some people is a very dangerous thing in this country. And I would question the wisdom of any lawyer who is, as any judge who is presiding over these kind of cases, being in any way politically affiliated, even a member of a political party, I think is something that some will question. We're going to talk more about this with Charlie Downs in a second. He's a spokesman and campaigns director at Restore Britain. Stay with us here on Talk.
They fell apart when they tried to adjust the personal independence payment, and their Labour MPs wouldn't vote for any spending cuts, which didn't surprise me at all. That's partly why we're headed for crisis, because if Labour MPs won't vote to control spending, quite the reverse, they'll rebel in large numbers, then even if Rachel Reeves wanted to do the right thing, she wouldn't be able to. So it's a very serious situation, I'm afraid, and thank goodness for your listeners, because until the public are demanding lower taxes, we're really, and that means lower spending, of course, we're really headed towards disaster.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, lots of people getting in touch. Please do keep your calls coming in, 0344 499 1000. On WhatsApp, you can send a voice note on that same number. Let's hear one now from Vince, who sent this in.
So it now appears that the ECHR actually runs this country, and more so, they actually now can override local planning decisions. Clearly, the hotel is an HMO against local planning laws, but the ECHR is far more better equipped to tell us what we can or can't do.
Malcolm in Southampton says, my wife and I are struggling to contain our anger over this. Let's remind ourselves that the hotel residents have criminal status. This has elevated things to another level. Our rights and safety are now of secondary importance and have been abrogated by those of illegal entrants who have broken the law. It is outrageous. That's Malcolm in Southampton. Glenn in Colchester. Peter, that statement from Dame Angela Eagle, the immigration minister, mentions the savings that would be made closing the hotels, but makes no mention of the subsequent cost of housing them. The only chance we have is for the financial markets to force through a general election. Nikki says, I just can't understand why the government are behaving like this. The only thing I can think of is that Labour know they will struggle for votes at the next election, so we're bringing all the illegal immigrants in, rush through their asylum claims, they'll have the right to vote. They don't actually, it takes a lot longer to get the right to vote, but still. And then they will be expected to vote for Labour. Just a thought, as I cannot figure out this madness. And James says, why do the government want to fight on two fronts? One front, the illegals. Now they want to take on the British people. Well, I wish them luck with taking on the British people. Charlie Downs is a spokesman and campaigns director at Restore Britain. Charlie, good evening.
Peter, good to see you.
What do you make of this?
Oh, I mean, it's just outrageous. But at this point, I think a lot of us are numb to the outrage because it's just the latest in a long line of these insults to the British people. And I don't want people to forget how this whole thing started. It started with some 38-year-old creep, alleged paedophile from Ethiopia, sexually assaulting, allegedly, a 14-year-old girl in Epping who was wearing her school uniform at the time. I mean, the locals there are right to be outraged.
Yeah, I just want to be really careful with that specifically, Charlie. I don't want to talk about that because there's an active legal case at the moment. The last thing either of us would want to do is prejudice a trial. You're right to say it's happening, but let's just put that to one side just for the meantime. What is?
My apologies, Peter.
Absolutely no problem at all, Charlie. What is? What is
the
absolutely
general climate?
Yeah,
if
go ahead.
I may, Peter.
Sure,
the general climate around this issue, Len, let's make it a little bit more general, is that the people coming over the channel and overstaying visas illegally are generally a threat to the local community. And now we can't forget that according to official Home Office statistics, since 2018, 75% of those who have come across the channel, so-called asylum seekers, have been adult men. And we know that a lot of these people lie about their age, so the actual real percentage may be as high as maybe 80%, 4 in 5. Of those coming are adult men. And by definition, if you are an adult man coming from a country like Pakistan, which is not at war, you are not an asylum seeker. You are an illegal migrant, possibly an economic migrant, but God knows what you're coming here to do. And if the behavior of some of these people is anything to go by, they do pose a threat to local communities. And so to hear the Home Office and their legal representatives saying that the rights, so-called, of those people are more important than the safety concerns, brushed off as if they are irrelevant, of local people, it's just the deepest and most unimaginable betrayal of the British people by the people who are supposed to be governing our country in our interests.
How much do you think the council are at fault here?
Well, I mean, I think the council really, it appears they tried to act in the interests of the people in Epping. I mean, sure,
they were criticised by the ruling, though, for missed opportunities and not doing the right thing. They were criticised quite a lot in this as well.
Well, it required local people to apply some pressure to the council in order for them to actually do anything. But to their credit, they did seek this injunction. They appeared to have got it. But it was, the Home Office having to intervene that cancelled it. And the interesting thing is, if you read the judgment, their reason for blocking this injunction and keeping these primarily adult male asylum seekers in the Bale Hotel at Epping is fear of further, quote, lawlessness. Now, as far as I'm aware, there wasn't a great deal of lawlessness that actually happened outside the Bale Hotel in Epping. It was largely peaceful protests
of
ordinary parents.
That's right.
And so this idea that this injunction would have incited lawlessness in other parts of the country, it's just the most unimaginable doublespeak.
There's also a real fear there of what is peaceful, lawful protest and people standing up for their rights and their community. And that concerns me, Charlie.
Well, Peter, what recourse do people have if when they try to make their voice heard in a peaceful, democratic way, ordinary parents, ordinary local people going out into the streets and just standing outside the hotel with placards, if that is shot down as lawless thuggery, and I mean, Keir Starmer, of course, has used that kind of language to describe concerned citizens in this country before, what recourse do people have? Because I think that the great paradox here is that by showing lawful, peaceful protest as being an ineffective means to make a voter's voice heard, and indeed the ballot box seeming to have no real difference over this issue either, what recourse are people supposed to have? I mean, that really is the question that this poses. And I think for all of the talk of fears of unrest, I think the Home Office are basically pouring petrol on the fire.
Yeah, well, let's hope there is no unrest. Let's hope things stay completely peaceful and people vent their anger in a legal way, not least by giving the station a ring on 0344 499 1000. I mean, there's just so much anger out there, Charlie, with this ruling. We know that there's going to be more legal argument in October, but if you're a government that wants to actually close hotels by the end of the Parliament, surely closing one of them now might be a start.
Well, I think this is the million-dollar question, Peter, is if they close the hotels, where do the residents go? And I think the correct answer to that question would be, from our perspective, what we at Restore Britain have been campaigning for, is the use of MOD land, disused MOD land, and temporary tented encampments where.
But why not put them in social? Why not put them in social housing, Charlie? Because as Keir Starmer tells us, there's absolutely no problem with social housing. There's loads of social housing in this country. It's waiting for those asylum seekers to go there. He literally told Parliament that. I mean, how out of touch can you get?
Well, I think you're getting ahead of me, Peter, because I was going to say what's actually going to happen is they are going to be put up in houses of multiple occupancy, social housing, which is actually way worse, because at the very least, when they're housed in hotels, they're all kept in one place and there is security on site. Whereas if we're talking about HMOs and social housing, we're literally talking about houses, down the road from me. Okay? And that is a very, very worrying prospect, because I think it's going to make this issue so much more difficult to deal with when the time comes and when a government with the will to solve it actually arrives. And so, again, I think that it's as though if this were by design and if the government were doing this on purpose to stoke up tension, friction, and possibly unrest, the strategy wouldn't look much different to what they're doing now. Now, I'm not saying they are doing that. I think actually a lot of the people in authority in this country genuinely believe they are doing the right thing in, securing.
But that's part of the problem, isn't it?
Sorry, say again.
That's part of the problem, in that a lot of them do think they're doing the right thing, and
well, again,
they just can't see it. They can't conceive about why people would be angry about this.
Well, there was this story today in The Sun, Peter, about some asylum seekers being given like balloon craft lessons and this sort of thing, which reads as so ridiculous. But when you imagine, asylum seekers, genuine refugees coming from a neighbouring, culturally proximate country like France, for example, if they were fleeing a genuine conflict, you can imagine a scenario where the British people would want to provide some kind of leisure activities to the refugees coming here. But the problem is this system, this legislative architecture, is being taken advantage of by people who do not share our values, who care not one iota for the notion of fairness and playing by the rules, who are coming here to exploit us and who know that we are a soft touch. And so that's why you get Ethiopian, Eritrean, Pakistani, Afghan, Iranian males, adult men, fighting age men, who have come across the channel and are, there seems to be some evidence to suggest they engage in criminal activity, being given balloon craft lessons. It makes us look like a joke of a country. And under this government, we are.
Makes us look like balloons. Charlie, thank you. Charlie Downs there, spokesman and campaign director of Restore Britain. Should say, actually, there has been, of course, a U-turn by the Home Office on that. The Sun have won that victory. It's the Sun what won it. We'll be talking to them a little bit later on. Interestingly, as well, there was a by-election last night for a council seat in West Hampstead in Camden. This is Keir Starmer's backyard. The Lib Dems won by over half the vote. The Labour vote was down 23.4%. Now, this is not a place, Reform UK, we're probably going to win. I think West Hampstead is perhaps not top of Nigel Farage's list of priorities. Reform got 7.2% ahead of the Greens. The Conservatives were down 6.3%, but Labour down nearly a quarter of their vote, and the Lib Dems winning more than that, winning more than half the vote at 54.4%. Just one by-election. These things, can be looked into. We can overplay these things, but I just think it's interesting in Keir Starmer's backyard that people are doing things in a slightly different way. They're voting in a different direction. Interesting message here just before the break. Why are we not hearing from the Prime Minister? Nobody seems to be asking this. Media outlets should put more focus on this. Believe me, we have asked for reaction from the government. We've asked the Home Secretary to come on. Maybe we'll hear from the government this weekend. We will see. We'll certainly hear from you in just a minute. Pick up the phone, make the call, 0344 499 1000. We will talk to you in just a second here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. Loads and loads of messages coming in, and we're going to talk to a couple of callers in a second. I want to hear a couple of voice notes first. Firstly, from Andy, please.
It's time for King Charles to leave an actual legacy. His popularity is at an all-time low, as well as it is with this Labour government. It's time for King Charles to walk into the Commons and dissolve Parliament and leave behind a legacy to be a notable king of the past before he passes away.
Andy, he just can't do that, even if he wanted to. He acts on advice of the government, and I think that would cause a constitutional crisis. You're not the first person who has suggested that, but the King really doesn't have that power in our democracy anymore. But we have the power to talk here on Talk, 0344 499 1000. Let's hear another voice note from Sean.
Hello, Peter. As a prison worker, this has been a very demoralising day. We are going to have such an influx of people, and the gates are open. As far as anyone is concerned across the channel, this ruling has made it almost inevitable that we are going to be swamped, and the prisons are already at capacity.
Thank you, Sean, for that. Daniel's in Darlington. Daniel, I don't think we've spoken before necessarily. Very good to talk to you. What would you like to say?
Hi, thanks. First time calling.
Great to hear from you. We're always good to hear from new callers or people who ring us frequently. You're all very, very welcome in this station. Daniel, what point would you like to make?
Well, I've just driven up from Birmingham listening to the whole thing unfold as I was driving along, and I was just getting more and more and more angry over the fact that these hotels are remaining open. We need to be moving them out of the hotels, putting them somewhere secure that doesn't violate their human rights. Their human rights are to be fed, watered, clothed, sheltered and warm.
Yeah, and medical attention too. And all of that can be done a lot more cheaply and away from people who don't want them in their community.
Absolutely, and I 100% agree. I have 2 young children. I dread to think what it's going to be like when they are 10 years old, 15 years old. What's it going to be like? I've got a little girl. You know, I think I share the same sentiments as Jeremy Kyle. If anything should happen, I will go to prison.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, I think a lot of fathers feel that way. Thanks for your call. Good first call. Don't make it the last one. Give us a ring anytime. Joe in Bournemouth wants to talk about Epping as well. Joe, you're very welcome to the programme. Tell us what you'd like to say.
Hello, Peter. I think we need to strip this right back and really look to what was going on with the legal system. We need to forget about migrants. We need to forget about every argument or protest going around it. It was about planning. And the fact is, it's not a hotel. And the judges have ruled against British law in favour of European law. And that's a problem.
So, I mean, it is a hotel, and that's part of the argument, isn't it? And we are stripping it back. We've had an explanation from Mark Stevens earlier on today about the principle and how people feel about this. And actually what the judges said as well, Joe, is fascinating, when they have been very, very critical of the council too. What do you make of that?
Yeah, but so if we're looking at law again, if you're looking at planning and something that wasn't picked up, it'd be 10 years before something becomes law. Legally, the fact is, if planning was missed on something, this isn't 10 years, it's been a few years, so that's irrelevant whether they actually went after it. The bottom line is, can you phone up and book a bedroom at that hotel? Can anyone walk into that hotel and book a bedroom? Yeah. No, they can't. It's not a hotel anymore. Therefore, planning needed to be changed. Full stop. So these lawyers, the people are paying £250,000 a year, seem to have their own agenda. Yeah. And it's becoming quite clear that the agenda is not with the people of this country.
Very interesting points, Joe. Thank you. Thank you for your call. In the last hour, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, has posted this clip on social media. Let's have a look at what he has said about the Bell Hotel.
So the Epping Hotel judgment has just come in, and it shows the government, the Labour government, using the courts against the British people. They even brazenly said in court that the rights of the illegal immigrants in that hotel were more important than the rights of local people in Epping. That is an absolutely disgraceful thing for the government to say, and shows whose side they are on. Let's not forget, these hotels were being closed down in the 9 months before the last election. If that had continued, there wouldn't even be any hotels open right now. But the reason these hotels are still being used is because the government cancelled the Rwanda deterrent just days before it was due to start, and as a result, the numbers illegally crossing the channel this year have been the worst ever. This weak Labour government is unwilling to take the steps needed to get our borders under control, and cases like today's judgment and the hotel in Epping are the results of this Labour government's failures.
That's the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. He posted that on social media. Perthshire Pete says, Peter, the government are pushing the people more and more to the edge. What can we do now? A nationwide strike, walkout, or just stop paying tax? Great show, as always. Another person says, for the last 30 years or more, the people have voted to cut or stop immigration, and we've been ignored. We've gone to court. We've been ignored. What else can the masses do if the people who work for us ignore us? Karen says, the Home Office needs to change the statement on their website. The first duty of the government is to keep citizens safe and the country secure. The Home Office plays a fundamental role in the security and economic prosperity of the UK. Don't you think it should be changed? Yvette Cooper. Phil says, I'm so angry the ruling on the Bell Hotel was overturned by the judges. However, Epping Council must share a portion of the blame for failing to follow the appropriate rules and regulations on a change for use for the hotel. It's a bit of an open goal for the appeal judges to score in. And Amy says, I think the government will feel very uncomfortable next week when Parliament returns. I think they will have to answer an urgent question on this. Then it's Prime Minister's questions and Reform UK Party conference next week, Friday and Saturday. I think Nigel Farage will talk about this decision there. I think you can bet your bottom dollar on that, Amy. And another person says, if you don't point out that even if one hotel in Epping was closed, whomever was staying there still need to be housed somewhere else, you're not having an honest conversation. They're not being eliminated or sent back. So what exactly is the win, even if it is closed? Well, let's talk to Kevin in Norfolk. Kevin's giving me a ring, 0344 499 1000. There's one thing you want to talk about this evening. Let's hear Kevin's view on it. Kevin, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Thanks, Peter. I've spoken to you before. I've told you about my partner, who is a legal migrant, and everything that we've done to get her a dependency.
I remember the
visa.
conversation, Kevin. It was quite a battle to get her legal status and so on, and that is something that you've done absolutely, doing everything by the letter of the law. So what do you make of what's happened today?
Oh, it's absolutely disgraceful, and it's not about adhering to the letter of the law. It's the message that it sends out. And in fact, if you think about the competence of the government, I mean, this is an incompetent ruling because it's only going to fire the silent majority into further action. It is absolutely disgraceful. I just cannot understand the competence of the government, that they don't think that this is a wrong thing to do. It is not what the silent majority can do. Can I just mention something that I don't know if you know Professor David Starkey?
I do, yeah. I've met him a few times, yeah.
Extremely well-read, intelligent guy. And he said the definition of a liberal democracy is when the elected government enact the will of the majority. The elected government enact the will of the majority.
And as one of our people on Twitter pointed out a minute ago, the government's been told, successive governments have been told over and over and over again, sort out immigration. And they haven't done it. Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, they haven't done it.
Absolutely. And so, you know, this is what with the freedom of speech crackdowns as well, this is no longer a liberal democracy. And this is a very, very dangerous situation that we're in. And it appalls me. And I think the last time we spoke, Peter, I said I was an absolute lifelong, 40 years, Labour voter. Used to wear my red rosette going down to the election office. Not anymore. This is not a party that I recognise from my youth and my middle ages. Yeah. It is no longer the Labour Party that I supported for decades and decades. And I know exactly who I'll be voting for. And I tell you this, where I am in North Norfolk, the constituency of North Norfolk is going to end up one of the safest Reform UK seats in the UK. I haven't met any single person who is not going to vote for Reform UK at the next election.
We'll certainly see what happens there, Kevin. Thanks for your thoughts. I just want to get Maria in before we go to a break. Maria's in Shropshire and has given me a ring. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yes, hi. I'm a grandmother of 77 with 5 grandchildren, and I'm very, very concerned about them. Regards to the Essex hotel, I feel that even though they're still there and likely to stay there, why can't they put security guards and lock them up for 24/7, which they should be in? And I feel that they should be let out for 2 hours a day in the grounds for exercise. But I cannot believe that this government is doing nothing. And where is
Keir Starmer?
Keir Starmer.
Yeah, well, he says he's smashing the gangs. He says he's taking a lot of action on this, Maria.
For God's sake, he's an absolute liar through, and so are most of his people. And I can honestly say that I feel that this is going to end up like the storming of the Bastille in France, and the government is going to be pulled down one way or another. The British people cannot go on like this. They cannot. It's not fair.
Maria,
people that need housing before they do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Maria, and I think a lot of people are very, very angry. Certainly we don't want a storming of a Bastille kind of situation, but listen, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with Maria? What do you make of what she said there? 0344 499 1000. We'll take a brief break now. We'll talk about the sport, and then we'll get more of your comments. I can see the phone's still going. 0344 499 1000.
The Russians will only accept a complete capitulation of Ukraine. And I never tire of reminding people what a very good friend and a senior Ukrainian diplomat said to me in the early days of the war. He said, Cormac, it's very simple. If Russia stops fighting, there will be no war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin has told us and continuously that what he aims to do is to wipe Ukraine and Ukrainian identity off the face of the map. He considers it a false country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Tim's been in touch, Tim Rowe in Norfolk, who says here is a lot of the noise surrounding the lifting of the injunction on the Bell Hotel. This was only a temporary injunction. The case will go to trial. The arguments will be put forward by both sides. My worry is that the government has more resources than the local council, says Tim. Tim, I think you're right. I think the likelihood of the local council winning is low. We've certainly heard that from a number of lawyers today. And Gary in Blackpool says, hopefully this will be the beginning of the end of this current government. Ian Neastley says, Peter, what is everybody moaning about? The result is perfect. Another nail in the coffin for Labour and the illegal migrants not hidden on in houses of multiple occupancy. Perfect, says Ian in Eastleigh. Debbie quite simply says this is a disgusting government, in her opinion. We'll take a little breather from this just for a second, but keep your calls coming in on 0344 499 1000. We'll get to those, but now I want to talk about the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Well, Phil Cadden is the night sports editor at The Sun. Phil, great to have you in the studio. Thanks for coming in. How are you doing?
All good. My pleasure having me on.
Under pressure, Manchester United boss Ruben Amorim faced the media today ahead of the must-win game against Burnley tomorrow night. What did he have to say after the embarrassing defeat to League Two Grimsby earlier in the week?
Well, Peter, it's just another day in the soap opera that is Manchester United. It never fails to deliver storylines for everyone in the media. It's been another chaotic week at Old Trafford, losing to Grimsby on Wednesday night in the Carabao Cup. Ruben Amorim, after the game, gave cryptic messages over his future. Some interpreted it that he could walk. Obviously, his future was questioned today. He's basically said that he's quite an emotional guy. He's blamed his emotions for his comments the other night. And he said that he's not going to change. Sometimes he hates his players, sometimes he loves his players. Very mixed messages. And when we actually cut through it and get to the game tomorrow against Burnley, I think all the noise will have to part to one side, and he has to actually deliver results, because the Old Trafford faithful won't allow this to continue.
Thomas Tuchel's latest England squad released today ahead of important matches against Andorra and Serbia. Who's in, who's out?
Well, the main news from in and out is Trent Alexander-Arnold of Real Madrid has been dropped for this set of internationals. He's actually got a fight on his hands both at club and country, because club legend at Real Madrid, Dani Carvajal, is now fit again. So his minutes at Real Madrid have diminished, and Thomas Tuchel's basically saying that, you know, with Reece James and Tino Livramento ahead of him in the pecking order for England, he needs to start playing more to actually get his place back at international level. But the main news line today from Thomas Tuchel is his grovelling apology to Jude Bellingham. Tuchel made comments after the summer internationals where he said that his mother would find Bellingham's actions on the pitch repulsive. Now, he's claimed today that he used the wrong choice of word, and he obviously regrets that.
Let's not bring our mums into these things. It's never a good idea, is it, Phil?
No, not at all. But I think he regrets that one, because Bellingham's a huge player for England.
Certainly. And a huge character could return to the Premier League after being sacked from his role in Turkey. Tell us about this.
Jose Mourinho has lost his job at Fenerbahce. They failed to qualify for the group stage of the Champions League. Obviously, with the international period coming up and a long 2 weeks for some managers, he's already managed Chelsea, Tottenham and Manchester United in the Premier League, and there'll be a lot of managers looking over the shoulders. You look at the likes of Graham Potter at West Ham, Daniel Farke at Leeds, and even Nuno at Nottingham Forest. They've all had difficult starts to the season and fractious relationships with owners, and you could see potentially a return for Jose to England.
Well, Phil, thank you so much. Lots in that. Phil Cadden there, night sports editor at The Sun. Appreciate you coming into the studio. Another interesting aspect of all of this is, of course, your messages in regard to everything that's going on in Epping. I've written to my MP, says Dave, asking how he feels at being a lesser citizen. That's Dave in Dorset. And Paul in Margate says, good evening, Peter. I'm disgusted with this afternoon's Epping Bell Hotel ruling. But just imagine the scenario in a month's time after the new school term starts next week. If another young girl is assaulted by one of these illegal immigrants housed in this facility, let's hope that doesn't happen, of course. My wife and I fear for this country's future, says Paul. Well, certainly what we need in all of this is a lot of common sense, and if you want to join Mike Graham and Jeremy Kyle's world of common sense, you can do so, because tickets for the event, this is Mike and Jeremy's live show, World of Common Sense, they're now on sale, and it'll take place on the 15th of November, Saturday the 15th of November, so in about 2.5 months, at the Shepherd's Bush Empire in London. You can secure your tickets today by visiting Ticketmaster, or go to Mike Graham's X account at IROMG, Independent Republic of Mike Graham, or Jeremy Kyle's Instagram, where the link is pinned to the top, so you can get your tickets for that. Mike Graham and Jeremy Kyle's World of Common Sense. So you go to Mike's Twitter account, IROMG, or Jeremy Kyle's Instagram account, and you can get the link to where the tickets are, or just go on Ticketmaster and you can find them there as well. Margaret in Birmingham has been in touch and says, it's always Angela Eagle who has to make a comment, never Yvette Cooper. Always gets others to talk for her. What a waste of space. Alan in Doncaster, illegal immigration is out of control. Do politicians really think it ends in harmony, or are they ignoring the disaster ahead? Ernie says, if it didn't take long for the court to make a judgment on the hotel, so how about they push through an order saying whether the migrants coming over in boats are doing it legally or not? If they're coming illegally, we have no reason to house them in hotels. We need a judgment on these people immediately. Well, Ernie, from 2022 it has been illegal to come onto these shores on a small boat. That is an illegal act. It is perfectly factually correct to call these people illegal immigrants or asylum seekers, or however you want to refer to them. Dave in Walthamstow says, great show, Peter. I'm very upset with the result. Paul in Hertfordshire says, your show is brilliant at working through the two-tier decisions being taken in the UK today. It is clear that judges and Labour politicians are anti-British, says Paul. I'm so disgusted with this government. They need to wake up and realise they're so out of step with the British people and are supporting the illegal immigrants. Shame on all your treasonous betrayal. I fear for the future, says Paul. And the final one before the news from Rachel. Great show today. Listening to you reading out the CV of Justice Bean, there's a clear conflict of interest and almost seems like it was handpicked to sit on this case. So much for a separation of powers. Well, Lord Justice Bean would argue, I'm sure, and would say that he is totally independent and has made this decision completely based on the law. The fact is that he was treasurer of a Labour grouping within Labour lawyers, and has advised, that group certainly has advised the Labour Party and Labour MPs on what to do. He would argue, of course, and I'm not suggesting he's not totally independent, but there is at least a question that can be asked about that. We'll continue to ask all the questions that need to be asked about this case after the break. You can get your voice on the air too.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening. It's just gone 6 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Really appreciate your company this evening. There's one major story we're talking about today, and that is the fact that the Court of Appeal has ruled against Epping Council, and for the government, the Bell Hotel in Epping will stay open. There will be further legal argument on this in the autumn, but for now, the Bell Hotel stays open and those asylum seekers are still there. Locals are really angry, as are people right across the country. There are many opposition politicians very angry about this too. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get your point across between now and 7 o'clock. And as always, as I do on all my programmes, I will get as many callers on the show as possible. If you want to send a voice note, you can send it on that number too. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on 0344 499 1000. You can text me the traditional way on 87222. Be sure to put the word talk in your text so it comes up on the screen in front of the producers so they can have a look at it and send it through to me. You can also tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much to everybody who's contributed already. We'll get through as many of the messages and calls as we can between now and 7, as well as speaking to our guests. Plenty to discuss before 7 o'clock here on Talk. I should say the conversation continues tomorrow between 10 and 12:30, and on Sunday between 10 and 1 we'll be speaking to Alex Burkhardt from the Conservatives, the Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary. He will be with us on Sunday, hoping to speak to the Education Secretary. That's not confirmed yet, but we'll see if the government play ball. I am also presenting Drive all of next week. Jeremy's away, so I'll be here between 4 and 7 every day, Monday to Friday, so you can join me for that. Today, with the reaction to the Bell Hotel, there's been lots of it. Let's hear from Councillor Ken Williamson. He's a member of Epping Forest District Council Cabinet. He spoke outside the Court of Appeal following the ruling.
This is not the end of the matter. While the Court of Appeal has lifted the temporary injunction, the case for the final junction is still to be heard. Our battle on behalf of our residents will continue. A few weeks from now, we will be back in court, where we trust the strength of our case will still prevail. Epping Forest has always given the Home Office much cause for reflection. We understand government faces a dilemma, but that should not be at the expense of local communities. Planning law may seem dull, it might seem boring, but it goes to the heart of the relationship between local communities and good government. It enshrines the rights of local people to have a say within their own communities, and it should not be set aside lightly. The government can still listen. It needs to understand and take responsibility for the events that have taken place in Epping over the past 6 weeks, for the trauma and disruption brought upon our community. The battle is not over, and we will continue the fight. It is nothing less than the people of Epping would expect and deserve.
That is Ken Williamson there. He is a council member of Epping Forest District Council. Chris Philp, who for the Conservatives, he's the Shadow Home Secretary, he's spoken in the last hour.
So the Epping Hotel judgment has just come in, and it shows the government, the Labour government, using the courts against the British people. They even brazenly said in court that the rights of the illegal immigrants in that hotel were more important than the rights of local people in Epping. That is an absolutely disgraceful thing for the government to say, and shows whose side they are on. Let's not forget these hotels were being closed down in the 9 months before the last election. If that had continued, there wouldn't even be any hotels open right now. But the reason these hotels are still being used is because the government cancelled the Rwanda deterrent just days before it was due to start, and as a result, the numbers illegally crossing the channel this year have been the worst ever. This weak Labour government is unwilling to take the steps needed to get our borders under control, and cases like today's judgment and the hotel in Epping are the results of this Labour government's failures.
Well, Dame Angela Eagle is the Immigration Minister. She says we're working hard to relieve pressure in the system and striking back at criminal people smuggling gangs at every stage, including returning more than 35,000 people who have no right to be here, equipping law enforcement with counter-terror style powers, and starting to detain small boat arrivals under a groundbreaking deal with France. It will take some time to fix the broken system we inherited, but the British public deserve nothing less, and we will not stop until the job is done. The government will close all hotels by the end of this Parliament, and we appeal this judgment so hotels like the Bell can be exited in a controlled and orderly way that avoids the chaos of recent years that saw 400 hotels open at a cost of £9 million a day. Well, they are the government and they still have those hotels open. Danny Shaw is with us. He's a former advisor to Dame Angela Eagle's boss, Yvette Cooper. He's a police and crime and justice commentator. Danny, what does it say that the government appeals a ruling that would close one hotel when it's saying that by 2029 they want to close all hotels? They say they want to do it in a controlled and orderly way, but surely starting with one might just be some progress.
Well, I think what the government was concerned about and why it wanted to appeal against this decision was that it doesn't want its hands sort of tied by court rulings. If it's going to be serious about closing asylum hotels by the end of the Parliament, by 2029, and I sincerely hope it does achieve that, 200 hotels currently open, then it wants to do it in a structured way, in an orderly way, in a way that they can find alternative accommodation or they don't need that accommodation anymore in particular areas. So I completely get their arguments. They were kept out of the hearing effectively by the High Court judge, Mr. Justice Eyre. Court of Appeal said that was a serious mistake and that the Home Office should have been allowed to make representations and been a party to the proceedings. And so, you know, I think on the face of it, you know, you might think, oh, the Home Office is in a logical position. It's not really. They're just saying, the Home Office, we want to do this in a managed, orderly way. This decision, if it was allowed to stand, would have meant we'd have to find alternative accommodation for those 138 men. And also it may have encouraged other councils to do the same, which would also create further problems. But make no mistake, Peter, this government has got to set out its plan for ending the use of asylum hotels. It needs to not just make some airy-fairy statements or float some ideas in the newspapers. It's got to set out a concrete plan, a timetable, with numbers and details. Next week it needs to do that, because if it doesn't, then I'm afraid this problem is going to get worse for them.
Do you think it was wise for Home Office lawyers to, in their written arguments to the court, make their legal argument that the rights of the migrants and the human rights of the asylum seekers in the hotels were of more importance than the people of Epping? That is essentially, okay, it's an illegal argument, but as nonetheless the government of this country and their legal representatives, that would have been signed off by your former boss, Yvette Cooper, saying that the rights of the asylum seekers are more important than the people of Epping. That's what the government said. I
think it was slightly more nuanced than that. I mean, what it was saying was that I think the rights of the people in the hotel hadn't really been given enough consideration against the people who were protesting. But actually, it's quite interesting. They
were arguing factually. They were arguing that their rights were okay. It's a more nuanced argument than that, but nonetheless, they were essentially saying that the asylum seekers' rights were more important than people in the local area. I mean, that's not a good look.
I don't think it's a valid argument. The Court of Appeal didn't have any truck with it. The Court of Appeal said...
That's what the government decided to make the argument.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think the Court of Appeal got it right. The Court of Appeal said it's not helpful to have an argument about one set of rights trumping another set of rights. Basically, the Court of Appeal got that right.
But doesn't that get to the heart? I'm not holding you responsible for this, Danny, because you're not. But doesn't that get to the heart of what the Home Office thinks? I mean, they say that they're there to protect people in this country and to deal with the asylum system. But actually, if they're making a legal argument where they're saying that the rights of asylum seekers trumps people in the local area, okay, it was thrown out by the judges, fair enough, that's fine. But essentially, on human rights grounds, they were making that argument. Doesn't that just say it all?
Well, the lawyers make a lot of arguments. I've read their submissions, Peter, and they are detailed, and that was one, I think, paragraph in, many paragraphs of arguments.
It's still part of the argument.
Lawyers, hang on, Peter. Lawyers deploy whatever arguments they can in order to try and win a case. I don't particularly agree with that one, but I don't think that's really what this was about. I think what the Home Office and Yvette Cooper was really concerned about was that if this ruling was allowed to stand, it's not about the 138 men in Epping. They could find alternative accommodation for them. That's not too much of a problem. What they were concerned about was that this would give a green light to other protesters, other local residents, other campaigners, that if they protested loudly and vociferously enough, there was a chance that the council would apply to the courts for an injunction to stop the hotel being used for asylum seekers, and that could create a sort of copycat ripple effect. I think that is what they were really concerned about.
OK, Danny, thanks very much for your contribution. That's Danny Shaw there, police and crime and justice commentator and a former advisor to Yvette Cooper. Let's speak to Henry Bolton, international border control expert. He's also the Social Democratic Party's spokesman for foreign affairs, defence and security. Henry, what do you make of this ruling?
Well, we should be clear as to what the ruling is, Peter. I mean, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest, the first thing. The ruling is a lot of people are thinking that this is a final decision, and as the councillor you had on outside the courts earlier said, this is not a final decision. We should be clear about that. In mid-October, Epping Forest District Council are taking this back to the court. It will be a slightly different case, and it will be a final case. But just to be clear, the decision for the interim injunction saying that these 138 people had to leave the hotel by the 12th of October that's been quashed. So they don't have to leave now until the next hearing in October, in mid-October. So that's where we are. This second hearing, or this next hearing, will be based upon purely planning laws. Was that hotel being used correctly and within the planning laws for housing these people, or was it not? The previous temporary injunction, I don't want to be boring, but it's necessary that people understand this, and there's something else I want to say about that in a minute. But this temporary injunction was a lot to do with the potential disruption to the local population, the local community. This next case will not be about that. So it's still a process that's going on, and we'll have to wait till probably around about the 16th or something of October to find out what the final decision is. But the other thing to say about this is that, and I think this is an incredibly serious decision, and I'll explain why in a minute. But we also need to be clear that actually what the Home Office case was that you were talking about earlier was not about the rights of one trumping the other. This said was the legal... That was
part of the legal argument, though. That was part of it.
But that was in the context of the legal argument being that the Home Office had a statutory duty to look after their rights, and it was that statutory duty that the Home Office couldn't sort of walk away from, and therefore trumped local concerns. I think this whole thing has been played absolutely appallingly. And Danny just now was 100% correct. The Home Office, Dame Angela Eagle, the Minister for Borders and Asylum, needs to turn around very rapidly and tell the country what her plan is for stopping the use of hotels, where exactly she is going to put asylum seekers going forward, because the country has, the public, as I said on behalf of the SDP earlier, the public has every right to know and wants to know where asylum seekers are going to be housed. Are they going to be housed more and more in private rented accommodation? Where are they going? The government needs to be transparent about this. Otherwise, as Danny says, the government has got one major problem coming towards it, due to lack of transparency and lack of consultation with the British public. They need to prove that whatever the argument in this court was, that the government is on the side of local communities and the British people above and before everything else. That's the most important thing. Put the interest of the United Kingdom and the British people first.
I just want to read one, Henry. I just want to read one text to you that speaks to exactly what you're saying. This is James who's texted in. Simple, straightforward, short text, and he says, "This government is only interested in our taxes. They are not interested in hearing our voices," says James.
I think that sums it up. Well done, James. I mean, that's the point. And if the British public believed that the government was putting their interests first, their safety first, their concerns first, even addressing their concerns, then you wouldn't have the disruption, you wouldn't have the protests, you wouldn't have the concerns that we've got today. But the British government is paying absolutely no attention to the security and criminal-related concerns of the British public. And we've got hotels in the town where I live, and I can tell you that these groups of and I understand why these lads are all gathering together, outside shops and outside, wherever they can. I get that. But the reality is that also has an impact on the local population. And the government is refusing to acknowledge and recognise that fact. So until they do, these protests are going to continue, and I suspect they're going to ramp up. And this case should never have been brought, because this hotel right next to a school should never have been used. In my opinion, it's not just about the law, it's about whether it's a sensible, a common sense move to put asylum seekers in a hotel right next door to a school. I think that is just blindly stupid, and the government deserves this hassle that it's getting now.
Henry, thank you. Appreciate that. That's Henry Bolton there, who is an international border control expert and also the Social Democratic Party spokesman for Foreign Affairs, Defence and Security. Let's hear a couple of voice notes before the break. Firstly from Tony in Bradford.
You know, my blood is boiling with this anti-British socialist government. You know, they hate the British company. They hate this country. What they're doing to the British people now, putting migrants in front of British people, fronting their own citizens where they should be protecting, you know, putting them first in for the doctors, for the hospitals, for the dentists, for housing. It's disgusting. What is going on with this country? I'm so disgusted with this government.
Tony, thank you. Another voice note now from David.
Hi, Peter. I can't believe the ruling for today on the Epping ruling. I didn't realise the background of the judges until after the decision was made, but when I saw that, I shouldn't have been surprised, if I'm being honest. What does make me nervous now is that when people are not listened to and don't feel like they're getting progress in the direction of what the people want, things can start to go wrong. So now I'm nervous that the whole situation feels like it's back on edge, whereas it felt like there was an element of resolution before. So I'm now nervous about what's about to happen next.
I'm nervous too, and I really hope it's peaceful. There are some people messaging me on Twitter and other platforms saying they can't get through today. There is capacity. Jodie is our assistant producer today. She's working at capacity. She's working really hard to take all your calls. We'll get as many of them as we can, so please keep trying. 0344 499 1000. Debbie says, election now. Labour is not in government for the British people. They have a globalist agenda that is very clear now. Not trusted in any way, shape or form. People are unbelievably exasperated now. Chris says, Labour have just finished themselves in government. They like Labour, will never see power again in this country. Yes, we have to wait, but I believe this government will implode by next year. Totally useless in all they do, and forget the Liberals or Greens. They're worse. The time is coming. Steve says, I think we have used all the words up. For too long we've been called racists and bigots. Now we're Nazis, far-right thugs. Too many false promises from politicians over the last 30 years. The only way forward is to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We managed very well without it beforehand. Paul says, I'm gobsmacked by how quiet the government has been. Given the levels of anger, there's been little or no response for Keir and his cronies. Perhaps it's shame. Not only is their silence telling, it spells weak and ineffective leadership. It's a disgrace, says Paul in Worcester. Well, Paul, in fairness, Dame Angela Eagle did put a statement out. We also have a statement from the owners of the hotel as well. Lisa Foster of the solicitors representing Samani Hotels, Richard Buxton Solicitor, says, we are pleased the Court of Appeal has ruled that the injunction should not have been granted by the High Court. Our clients realise that they have been caught in the middle of a much wider debate on the treatment of asylum seekers and respectfully ask that members of the public understand that the Bell Hotel has simply been providing a contracted service that the government requires. We now ask that all associated with the Bell Hotel are left alone to continue to support the government's asylum plans as best they can. We are grateful to the Court of Appeal for appreciating the urgency of the matter from everyone's point of view and dealing with the matter so swiftly. We have no further comment and will not be commenting on the matter again. Okay, Lisa, here's the point I have. Our clients realise they've been caught in the middle of a much wider debate on the treatment of asylum seekers and respectfully ask that members of the public understand that the Bell Hotel has simply been providing a contracted service that the government requires. The Samani Hotels took the money. They housed asylum seekers. They decided they were going to take the contract. Did they honestly think that local people were going to say, well done, great, capitalism in action? Did they honestly think that people locally and beyond were not going to notice this and we're not going to hold them accountable for that? It's fine to accept a government contract, but you've also got to accept the consequences, and this statement is not worth the paper it is printed on. We'll see what happens in a few months' time. We'll take more of your calls in just a second. Please do keep trying. 0344 499 1000.
Russians will only accept a complete capitulation of Ukraine. And I never tire of reminding people what a very good friend and a senior Ukrainian diplomat said to me in the early days of the war. He said, Cormac, it's very simple. If Russia stops fighting, there will be no war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin has told us, and continuously, that what he aims to do is to wipe Ukraine and Ukrainian identity off the face of the map. He considers it a false country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you very much indeed to the person who messaged me on Twitter to say Jeremy's not away next week. That is correct. Mike's away next week. Mike is away at the moment, actually, in America. So Jeremy's doing breakfast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. That means I'm doing drive all week next week. I've actually just been looking at the rota, which has come out from our elders and betters, the managers. So yes, Jeremy is doing breakfast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Then Mike's back Thursday, Friday. I'm with drive all next week, 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock Monday to Friday, and tomorrow 10 until 12:30, and indeed on Sunday between 10 and 1. So there's loads of opportunity to get your call in. If you're struggling to get it in today, there are loads and loads of people trying to get their calls in, and thank you to everybody who has been in touch. Let me just read a couple of messages. Actually, Malcolm says, a travesty of justice. I continue to support Epping Council. These migrants should be moved pronto. Let common sense prevail. Logically, the locals should have priority. That's Malcolm in Eastbourne, and also says Isabel Oakshott is on the ball. Martin in Gillingham says, yet again, councils who do not act when they should have done, quite happy to take their money and do sweet FA to earn it. What does FA stand for? Oh yes, flip all. Ofcom. Labour taking the great out of Great Britain for the last 420 days, says JP. It's shocking. Kath in Manchester, why don't all these human rights protesters take these asylum seekers in themselves? Like when the government asked if we had a spare room, we'll be taking someone from Ukraine who are fleeing a war-torn country. That's Kath in Manchester. Let's hear from Frank in London, who has some thoughts on Epping. Frank has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. You can do the same thing. Frank, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
What I would like to say is the problem we have is there is a concerted effort by the media to sometimes overblow and sensationalize the whole refugee crisis. Look, as a British taxpayer, I totally understand the concerns of people in Epping. But let's not forget one thing. A lot of the issues we are facing regarding refugees is an issue created by a lot of our government and its policies abroad. I remember very well in 2003 going on the street demonstrating against any invasion of Iraq or Afghanistan and all whatnot. And successive governments and that government of the day ignored the British public. And we knew for a fact that eventually the chickens will come home to roost. The British public have got to understand that the actions of our government abroad, unfortunately...
If we've been, can I just ask you, Frank, if we've been so horrible to the people of Afghanistan, if we've been so horrible to the people of Iraq, for example, why do they want to come here?
No, when you destabilize a country, it's not a matter of being horrible. You see, you are simplifying it. When you destabilize a country, when you create chaos in a country, and you do not put anything in place to sort out that chaos.
I totally agree with you. Let me just say.
Let me finish. You see, no, I'm not going to. This is the main issue. The moment you bring this up, everything is shut down. Look at Libya. Libya was a functioning place where
under Colonel Gaddafi.
Where Gaddafi did not allow any crossings. There was no crossings from Libya.
Do you think the Libyan people are better off today, or do you think they were better off under Colonel Gaddafi?
Excuse me, I think they were better off because it's...
You think they were better off under Colonel Gaddafi, under his murderous, brutal regime?
Says who? We are the ones, we keep telling people about a murderous regime here.
Yeah, I mean, he supported Colonel Gaddafi supported terrorists who attacked this country.
Oh, everything is about terrorists. This is the main issue, okay? That's the speaking point of Western media. We go on about we are going to go in there to sort a country out, but we leave it in an absolute chaos.
Okay,
that's the fact.
I mean, I agree with you that Libya was in chaos. I agree with you that Afghanistan is a pretty chaotic place. I agree with you that Iraq is not as stable as it should be. But are you honestly saying that people in Libya were better off under Gaddafi?
What I'm saying to you is it was a functioning country in its way.
Well, you can function in lots of ways.
No, wait.
Countries can function in lots of ways, but people don't have rights. And they don't have rights to freedom of expression. The kind of call that you're making now, you couldn't have made under Gaddafi's Libya.
No, like where? Like now in Israel, like Gaza and Israel, do they have the rights? And did you say anything against what the Israelis were doing in Gaza? You kept quiet when their rights.
Excuse me, Frank.
Denied.
That is completely incorrect. That is completely. It is completely incorrect, Frank. You need to go back and listen to my programs and listen to how I've criticised the actions of Netanyahu consistently over the past number of months.
The last 25 years. Well, the point I'm trying to make to you is, in Libya and Iraq, these places were not perfect in our eyes. But what I mean is, a lot of these places, these leaders were able to keep a lid on.
Yeah, they kept it, and you know how they kept a lid on these things, Frank. I'm not making the case for neoconservative intervention necessarily, but you're essentially saying that if a place is stable, well, then it's good. And I don't want to live under a regime like Gaddafi's. I don't want to live under a regime like Saddam Hussein. I don't want anybody else to either.
Yeah, but that is why they've decided to come to this part of the world, because we created, a pressure cooker. And unfortunately, when you go to Iraq and Libya, it's actually gotten worse because you have different clans and different groups of people fighting each other. Lawlessness, unfortunately, prevails in that chaos.
I don't think we can be blamed for the fact that asylum seekers are coming to this country.
For it. We launched an illegal war in Iraq. We launched an illegal war in Libya.
What's that got to do with the fact that people from Eritrea are coming here, Frank?
Yeah, but people from Eritrea, the reality is, you see, there's a small percentage. You see, now you are...
Okay, they're still coming, though. They're still coming, Frank. Why are they coming if what we have done is not of any consequence?
Because the thing is, we have played a role in a lot of these countries by, unfortunately, either propping up dictators, still giving a lot of these countries aid, and we know fully very well the finances
Frank,
are not going to the people who need it.
I just don't think a lot of your arguments hold water. I really don't, Frank.
It holds water. Oh, yes, it does. And you know exactly what I mean. It does. We have destabilized. And we are still destabilizing now. We are providing the instruments for Israel to cause more of a refugee crisis in 6 months to a year time.
Okay, there aren't any asylum... You rang in about... I'm happy to talk about Israel, Frank, but you rang in to talk about asylum seekers. To my knowledge, there aren't Gazan asylum seekers coming to this country just yet.
Yes, I'm talking about asylum seekers. What I'm saying is our actions and the role we play eventually create this crisis, because in 6 months to a year's
But my point
time,
to you is that there are many examples, including, for example, Eritrea. Southern Sudan is another one.
No, but why
where there
are
are
you
people...
bringing Eritrea? It's only about...
Because you don't like me bringing it in because it doesn't support your argument, Frank. But your point is that we have created this problem. My point to you, Frank, you need to listen to me, otherwise we're not going to have a conversation. The point is, Frank, that there is at least some asylum seekers are coming from Eritrea, some are coming from Southern Sudan. What has the UK government currently got to do with either of those countries?
Okay, in Sudan, do you know the root of the civil war happening there?
Tell me, educate me.
Yes, the root of the civil war is it's over minerals and gold.
Yeah. And
Britain, America, and its allies have sided with the UAE to fund...
So why are the Sudanese not going to America then?
Why are they not going to America? That's the point I'm making, is that when we get involved in a lot of these wars, because they are closest, we are closer to these countries.
Well, France is closer, Italy's closer. There are many other countries there where they could stay that they don't. So that, again, contradicts your argument, Frank, because you're saying they're coming to us.
It does not contradict my argument. It does not contradict my argument. What I'm saying to you is we are part of the problem. So
but your argument is that people are coming here because we're part of the problem. My argument is there are plenty of other places they could go. Why us? If they hate us so much, why are they coming here? My first question to you, if they hate us so much, why are they coming here? And you haven't answered that, Frank. Your argument is confused and confusing.
No, it's not a matter of hating us too much. See, you simplify things and you sound ridiculous by saying they hate us so much. They're not coming here because they hate this country. They're coming over here because when a country is destabilized and they are on the go, they would make their way to the closest country, one, if they speak the language, two, if they have any ties to that country. That's why they come here. The only way to
it's not the closest country. It's not the closest country at all. If they've ties here, they can come.
Ties to this country.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they have to.
The language.
Doesn't mean they have to.
Also,
Frank, I'm afraid we're just going to have to disagree, but thank you for your call. Let's hear from Damon in Wigan. Damon, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hello, good evening, Peter.
Hi there.
Your last caller, I've got no words fail me.
I was just really confused by what he was saying, I'm afraid. It just didn't seem to make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, me and my father-in-law, we both served in the British Armed Forces during the 1990s, and I was bound to the Official Secrets Act the same as my father-in-law. But what this government is doing is treason. As far as I can see, it is treason. If you are turning on your own country and your own people, then there's no other words for it, but it is treason, and this is what is going on. I've had to put a Freedom of Information Act in for my local council, the Wigan Council, because there is so many houses popping up now of multiple occupants, which I can see every day. I've got a 14-year-old daughter who wants to go out, and every time she comes and says to me, can I go out? I am frightened to death. Now, I didn't fight in the armed forces to be frightened to death when my daughter says she wants to go out. And the enemy now is within this country. They go on about, there might be a third world war. You've got to watch Russia. You've got to watch this. You've got to watch Britain. And I don't. It's awful to say, but the enemy is within. When this war, whenever this war is coming around the corner, starts off, they will turn on us. It'll be something like our Star Wars. Somebody will jump up and say, Order 66, and then everybody will turn on the British people because we're allowing everybody to come in who we've got no idea of. And I spoke to you not long since about my baby girl, Sabre, who passed away. You was mentioning about Nottingham Council taking the flowers off the grave.
I remember this story. I remember this, yeah.
And with what I see now, and I always listen to Talk and Mike Graham and yourself and Jeremy Kyle, and I do go and see Sabre, and I do think, when I'm in the graveyard, who has actually got the better deal? Is it me, or is it the people I'm going seeing? Because the people who I'm going seeing cannot be touched. And if my grandfather...
That's very sad, Damon. That's a very sad thing to think.
But it's the way this country is making. When you're British, you have been beaten and beaten and beaten so much to be British. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of the British flag. I fought under the Crown. I fought under Queen Elizabeth II. She was my commanding officer when I was in the armed forces. But you are so beaten now in this country that you are British.
Damon, I'm so sorry to hear that, and I really appreciate the call, and I really appreciate your service to this country, and I know there'll be so many people watching and listening who will feel exactly the same way as I do. And I'm kind of concerned, actually, to hear that you feel that way. And Damon, I just want you to make sure that you have the right support there, because if you're thinking in that way about those people in that graveyard, that's something I think you need to be quite concerned about. I do understand why people feel that way, certainly, but just make sure you talk to your family and friends about that. Will you do that for me, Damon?
I'm perfectly fine. It's just when you think about what's going on.
No, I get it. I get it.
And how much this world.
There's so many people who feel the same way, Damon. Feel the same way. Listen, thanks for your call. I really appreciate it. James said about Frank, who was on a little bit earlier on, says your caller is a great example of someone who comes to Britain and blames Britain for everything. Neil says maybe Frank should be a bit more thankful to the country that let him stay. Another example of Britain hating. Linda in York says, good evening, Peter. I've just signed a government petition for a vote of no confidence in this government after hearing the Epping judgment. Please may I ask your listeners to do the same. That's Linda in York. Thank you for that, Linda. We're going to find out what's in the Sun tomorrow. We'll take more of your calls right up to 7 o'clock. and then Samara Gill is here after then. I think we can probably hazard a guess that she may well continue the conversation about the Bell Hotel in Epping. You want to talk about it? This is your station, okay? Okay, it's my show, but it's your show too. You want to talk about it? You want to talk about the Samara? You tell us. We've basically cleared the schedule today to talk about this, the number one issue, because we are your station. We're the home of common sense. Keep it on talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sarah in Thatcham's been in touch and says, "Evening, Cardi P. I won't say good evening because what is good about it? I've never been affiliated to one party, but today I joined Reform UK. I'm absolutely disgusted with this out-of-touch, dishonest and socially deaf government. Where do we go from here? I despair and I worry for the future and safety of my daughter. Love you. Great show as always," says Sarah in Thatcham. Thank you. And Matt says, "Any person entering the UK outside of passport control should be subject to a criminal record and £5,000 fine payable as soon as they stay over 12 weeks. This would immediately stop the flow. Where there's a will, there's a way." And Greg in Lincoln says, "Ash summed it up last night with Andre. The state is now acting against the nation. My blood is boiling. But I'm keeping cool as I have a very chilling feeling this day is going to be significant in future." Well, it is a significant day. It's one that the Sun is marking tomorrow. It's the lead story, and John Lucas is with me, the night news editor at the paper. Clearly, we've been talking to a couple of your reporters actually earlier today, one on the scene, one in here as well, talking to people all over the place. No doubt a huge story for you tomorrow.
Well, that's right, yeah. So we've had Andy Robinson's been down at the scene for us, and he's been talking to all the locals. Absolutely furious about this. These protests, it was about a month ago, I think it started, off the back of somebody, I have to be careful because the trial's not completely finished, one of the residents there allegedly sexually assaulting somebody. That's the root of it. You've got to remember it's not just sparked from nothing. And yeah, look, they're very angry down there. We've had one mum down there saying, "Look, I'm not happy. I knew this would happen. I knew it'd get overturned. They've let down the women and children of Epping," and we'll be doing a big number on that tomorrow with some of these people who we're speaking to tonight. Our leader column, so that's the opinion of the paper, the way we're looking at this is it's a hollow victory for the government because it's cost a huge amount in taxpayers' money. Ultimately, they have this long-term policy where they want to end asylum hotels. They've actually had to spend money fighting to keep one open, which is bizarre when you look at it like that. They also, in their desperation to win this case, they made what we're saying is a grave error in suggesting that the rights of migrants, trump those of the local people. And that potentially is going to come back to
that is
to bite them in the
absolutely. We've been
backside.
talking about it all day. That is going to come back to haunt them. Speaking of people being let down, the balloons are gone.
The balloons.
The balloons are gone. This is the Sun
Oh
story
yes, of course. Yeah, sorry.
After your splash yesterday.
This is the second part of the. I was at a birthday party the other day.
Well, you're thinking, what's going on here? Sorry about that. Thomas Godfrey's splash.
Thomas Godfrey,
yesterday.
The big
the balloons are gone.
So not a victory for the protesters of Epping, but a victory for the Sun.
For the Sun.
In some So the balloon artist job. These were what were being offered at the immigration removal centre for people who are actually leaving the country. But this was supposed to be of benefit to them. Balloon artistry, painting jobs. These were advertised by the government. We ran this story today. Big splash, massive pickup everywhere. And lo and behold, it's one of those very quick turnaround victories. They've scrapped these jobs, taken. If you click on the website now, it says this vacancy is no longer available. Would have cost, if they'd have filled them all, about £165,000 a year. Which
you've saved the taxpayer that money.
We've saved the taxpayer that money. And hopefully it will be spent on something better than more barristers fighting other appeals.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Love Island. Its first ever blockbuster legal battle. I will be totally honest and say this is not my area of expertise. Tell us what the story is.
It's not your wheelhouse, so this is being likened.
Though obviously I do have a Love Island body, but
as we all do.
Of course.
It's been likened to Waggatha in a sense that this is going to take a celebrity, a couple of celebrities back into the High Court, potentially. So this involves Loken Nowaki and Whitney Adebayo, who were on the show in 2023. So they become boyfriend and girlfriend during the course of the show. They then break up. She has posted a video on TikTok that's been seen by about 3.5–4 million people, in which she claims they were talking about being out in the rain or the sun or something like that, and he's made a comment, allegedly, saying that she looked like she had dirty skin.
Oh dear.
So what she's saying is that's racist. Well, he's turned around and said, look, I never said that, and he's suing her for defamation now. So Love Island has been hit, as all of these reality shows have been, by various controversies over the years. So this one will play out in the High Court, and it'll be a bit messy, and it'll be a bit of bad. And
very interesting to cover as well. Tell us about a debt-ridden son who carried on playing his late mother's lotto numbers and what happened to him.
Yeah, well, look, it's a bit of a sad story, but also it's quite a hopeful story. We quite like this morning. So this is a chap, Terry Billings. He and his mum played the lotto. I think it's the People's Lottery. And his mum sadly died of cancer. She was 75, died of cancer in March 2020. And her last wish was, she said to him, you must make sure you carry on playing my numbers in the lottery because you're going to win one day. This poor chap, he racked up, this 46-year-old chap, he racked up 14k in credit card debt in the intervening years. Absolutely is wit's end. And he looked up to the sky and he said, he told his mum about all the struggles he was having. And lo and behold, next week, he's won £100,000 on the lottery.
Wow.
Playing the numbers that his mum picked, and good luck to him, and he's hopefully going to sort everything out.
That's a great story. I love that. Tell us about the warehouse worker told to beat it after singing Michael Jackson's vocal hiccup. Do you want to do it? Do you want to?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to do it.
You don't want to do it.
We've got a reporter down there who's actually very good at doing this.
Okay.
And he's ribbed all the time for it. 'Cause it's sort of a vocal tick he's got.
Yeah. Very good.
He should have come on to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. There's a bit of a war on banter, isn't there? A bit of a war on, light-hearted workplace tomfoolery.
Yeah, Angela Rayner doesn't like it.
But we've hit back because this chap, he was a warehouse worker for Co-op, and he loved doing this. I can't do the he sound.
Okay, all right.
Of Michael Jackson, which we all know what it is. There you go.
There we go.
He loved doing that round the warehouse. One chap took exception to it, and he said, look, I think you're doing it round me because you're being racist and you're bullying me. And this guy said, that's ridiculous.
I just do it all the time.
I just like doing it. I'm a bit of a joker. And he got sacked for this. and he took him to an employment tribunal, and the judge said, look, it's pretty rubbish conduct, it's inappropriate and juvenile, could have been offensive and humiliating to people, but actually we don't think he really meant it like that, it's okay, he's a bit of an idiot, here's £10,000 compensation. So
wow.
Yeah, it's worked out for him.
It's worked out for him. He is laughing all the way to the bank, clearly. John, thank you very much. I'm still trying to get the image in my head of you. Was it a 4-year-old sort of children's birthday party? I'm just trying to get the image of you at a 4-year-old's birthday party. I just don't think you'd fit in particularly well there. Were you sitting in the corner sort of mainlining Haribo or something like that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's John Lucas there. He's Night News Editor of The Sun. Thanks very much. Have a lovely weekend. John, you can read about all those stories in the paper tomorrow. We'll take more of your calls and talk to Samara Gill before her programme. She's going to be here between 7 and 9. Then What Just Happened. I'll be back tomorrow between 10 and 12:30, of course, but plenty of your calls, as many as we can fit in between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk.
This is the nightmare type of thing I used to wake up to on a weekly basis in number 10 Downing Street. You would have a clue that this stuff was going on. A third-party provider, an independent company that has a long, really expensive contract with the government to look after these people until you can do something else with them, especially if they are known criminals and they need to be deported from the country as soon as possible. And I would sit in my office and think, how the hell has this happened? And how the hell does it happen on your watch?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody on Twitter as well, getting in touch. Quite a few people slightly, I would say, divided on Frank's call a little bit earlier on. They're saying we need to take some responsibility as a country for the people who have come here as asylum seekers. Adrian says, handling Frank pretty well there, Peter. His argument is old hat and does not stand up. Could you allow these anti-British zealots to spout their bile so we can see what's going on, says Adrian. But Julie says, Frank does have a point. Tony Blair, that warmonger, took us into these countries and destabilised them because they didn't like how they were run. The UK is also largely responsible for the state of the Middle East. We were badly managed after World War I and World War II, says Julie. Angie says, is asking me whether I'm getting any commission for advertising Mike and Jez's one-night show. Will you be one of their guests? I so far have not been invited. This is Mike and Jez's big night, of course. Let me see if I can find the piece of paper that it's on. It's now in my big pile, but it is the World of Common Sense that Jeremy and Mike are doing. Here we are. It's the last piece of paper, of course. Mike and Jeremy's World of Common Sense. Tickets are for the live show now on sale. It'll take place on the 15th of November at Shepherd's Bush Empire in London. You can secure your tickets today by visiting Ticketmaster. You can also go on Mike's Twitter account, IROMG, Independent Republic of Mike Graham, or Jeremy Kyle's Instagram, where the link is pinned to the top. Mike's now in America for a few days, and of course, Jeremy is doing breakfast, and he will be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. I'm doing Drive all of next week. Derek in Manchester, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme, Derek.
Oh, to be quite honest, after listening to that judgment today, I've just come to the conclusion that the whole system needs ripping down and starting again, and that includes Parliament, the judiciary, the lot. We're being run by MPs who actually think that they overlord over us, when in actual fact they work for us. They're our employees, and we can't even hold them accountable for wrecking the country. It's an absolute disgrace. Judges who we've got human rights lawyers who are making a fortune. I've no doubt at all that some of those judges have come up through the same sort of system. And at the end of the day, if they're making a fortune at something, why would they try and rule against it?
It's a very good point, Derek.
Going completely against the will of the British people. That is not a democracy. We're sending troops all over the world supposedly fighting for other people's democracy, and we haven't got it. We haven't got democracy because democracy means the will of the people. Yeah. Not the will of a few parliamentarians who can't even be held accountable for what they've done.
Or a few judges. Derek, listen, thanks for your call. I really appreciate it. Appreciate everybody who's either got through or tried to get through today. Sorry we haven't been able to take everybody. Sorry I haven't been able to read every message. We just had, I think, I'm just looking at Ryan, the producer here. I don't think I've ever had a response to a story quite the same as this one, and we just haven't been able to get through. But the good news is that Samara Gill is here. She's going to be here between 7 and 9. Samara, great to see you. No doubt you'll be talking about the Bell Hotel.
Oh my gosh, yes. I am wearing black today because I think it's the funeral of the will of the British people. I think this is really a dark day for us and sort of a watershed moment for what could be. And yeah, we're going to cover it for the next 2 hours. We're going to have Peter Blexley on. We're going to have Robert Bates from Centre for Migration Control. We're going to have a range of guests kind of discussing this from all angles. I've just been talking to Pete Barnes, who'll be in here for the 2 hours. He's got a very different opinion on this. You are going to want to stay tuned for that because I was already kind of getting my fists out there for a second. Yeah, stay tuned for what he has to say. Yeah, I mean, thank you for covering it. I mean, I've just been watching the last 3 hours of you going through it, and it's just great that at least the people can voice their opinions on this station, because it seems like nowhere else can they do it in this country at the moment. I think as well it's important to, if our viewers and listeners want to talk about something, that we let them do that, that we let them give off a bit of steam and ventilate their opinions and hear their opinions, because there's so few people who actually do that, Samara. No, absolutely, and we can see that almost free speech, protests, that all seems to be getting sort of cut off from the stem here, and the judicial system is really being politicised, and it's a really scary time. It's a scary time for people who just want to have their say. They feel completely unheard, and they feel dismissed by the government. So this is a real slap in the face to those people in Epping. We are going to cross over to Epping. We're going to talk to Jamie McIver there, who I know that you know quite well as well. He's a Reform councillor. He's going to be outside the Bell Hotel, and he'll be talking us through what's going on there, because no doubt there'll be people. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the evening draws on. Samara's here between 7 and 9, and next week as well, I think, between 7 and 9 as well. If they'll still have me, let's see. I saw on the rotas are subject to change, but I saw next week that Samara's here between 7 and 9 as well on Friday. So just after the news you can hear from Samara. You can also contribute to the programme. If you didn't get your call in on this show, talk to Samara, certainly 0344
499 1000. Thank you to this person who says, can we please stop calling them asylum seekers? They have come from a safe country, France. They are illegal immigrants and should be put into detention centres before being deported. Thanks to Graham in Stirling, who says, how dare they? This government has to fall.